Audiobook by Fate's Reader. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel for more epic series. Drop your recommended novel below. We love to know what you want to hear next. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 251. Not an expert in techniques of the devil path. The monks wanted to go forth when monk Ming Xian said, "Hold it, fellow senior brothers. Let me subdue this devil and kill this monster." Before the monks could even say anything, monk Ming Xian had already rushed forward and winked at Qin Mu while saying in a low voice, "When you fight with me, do a few blows before admitting defeat. Once you admit defeat, they will be too embarrassed to kill you. Also, don't use devil techniques, or they will be infuriated again." The heart of this little monk isn't bad. He's much better than old monk Jing Ming. Qin Mu's gaze flickered and he smiled. "You and I shall exchange some pointers." Monk Ming Xian immediately made a move, and it was thunderclap 8 strikes, spring thunder on the lonely East Sea. As he moved, thunder rang through the area as though an overflowing river was surging into the sea as the spring thunder suddenly exploded. When this move was executed, it had the illusions of a divine art. The vital qi that was both in front and behind monk Ming Xian could be faintly seen transforming into majestic mountains with the river water surging down from them. It looked like it had come from the sky and smashed into the sea. When the moves of thunderclap 8 strikes were executed to this extent, they were almost no different from a divine art. Rulai's Mahayana Sutra of Great Thunderclap Monastery was indeed worthy of its reputation. Qin Mu also executed thunderclap 8 strikes which were just as impressive and majestic. Mountains and rivers, a vast sea and spring thunder, as well as world-shaking booms, exploded as the muscles on these two people flexed. The tendons were like fine dragons snaking here and there under the skin, pushing the circulation of strength to its maximum, cheering up the monks. "Ming Xian, beat this devil to death!" A dried-up, thin old monk shouted out. "This devil actually cultivates our great thunderclap monastery's technique. It's a blasphemy against Buddha, so beat him to death." Qin Mu's move changed and transformed into thousand-armed Buddha, and in that instant, his palm transformed into afterimages which made it seem as though he had 1,000 arms. Each movement of a palm caused the sound of thunder, as if a huge Buddha was waving his 1,000 arms to subdue devils. All the monks had a change in expression when they saw this. Qin Mu, this devil from heavenly devil cult, had already comprehended every single essence of thunderclap 8 strikes. Just based on this 1,000-armed Buddha, his attainments surpassed 80 to 90% of the monks in the monastery. The voices of the monks grew softer as they muttered in their hearts. "Seems like Ming Xian's attainment in this move is inferior to his. He probably can't win." Ming Xian also executed 1,000-armed Buddha to fight back, and he immediately knew that his attainments were lacking. His body trembled as he executed winning skill and expanded exponentially. Countless Buddhist scriptures surrounded his body like a huge bell which rang non-stop. The 2,000-armed Buddhas clashed, and the superior one was determined at that instant. Qin Mu's palm hit the huge bell which was the Buddhist scriptures, and rings of Buddha rays burst forth from the wall of the bell. At this moment, where did Qin Mu look like a devil? He was clearly an eminent monk that had achieved his Tao. A young Buddha that had green dragons surrounding him as he looked extremely dignified. The next instant, monk Ming Xian saw Qin Mu's palm breaking through the huge bell and changing into a fist mudra that hit him in the heart, astonishing him. Qin Mu's fist had gone precisely through the flaw in his Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. With his fist as a mudra, he exploited that flaw and went straight for the body. The strike had hit him straight in his lethal point. However, Qin Mu's fist didn't have much power. He retracted it after giving a gentle punch. The hearts of the monks calmed down. This devil's cultivation isn't high. Only his moves are exquisite. Monk Ming Xian composed himself and immediately countered, only to see Qin Mu slithering around him like a dragon. With his 1,000 arms moving about, countless flaws appeared on the Buddhist scripture bell in an instant. The lethal points in the heart of his brows, his ears, his eyes, the back of his heart, his sea of qi, his jade occiput were all marked once by Qin Mu. In the blink of an eye, he had received hundreds of fatal attacks. These attacks were all aimed at the flaws of monk Ming Xian's Rulai's Mahayana scripture. He was stunned for a moment, then felt like he was a cauldron that was leaking water everywhere. There were fatal flaws everywhere, and cold sweat uncontrollably rolled down his forehead. To remove the flaw, he had acted according to his initiative and changed Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. He thought he had erased the weak spot on his throat, but instead he had affected the rest of his body, creating more flaws in his technique. The cultivation of this devil is indeed not high. All the monks were put at ease now. If he can't break through Ming Xian's golden bell body protection, no matter how intricate his moves are, there will be no power behind his attacks. Qin Mu stopped, and monk Ming Xian came to a realization. He swiftly expressed his thanks. "Thank you, senior brother, for your guidance. Only now do I know that Rulai's Mahayana Sutra can't be carelessly changed." Qin Mu shook his head. "It's not that you cannot change. You just lack an opponent who can allow you to express your talent and potential to its fullest extent. If you had a person that had profound knowledge and wide horizons, he could push you to improve, to continuously change your technique. In that case, you would achieve perfection." Monk Ming Xian immediately looked at him, and Qin Mu shook his head again. I don't have the ability. You can go find Rulai, let him impart to you Rulai's Mahayana Sutra directly. I, as your opponent, will limit your improvement." Monk Ming Xian acknowledged this, but said, "Rulai is all about destiny. I don't know if I have this destiny." Crap! His expression changed, and he stamped his feet. "This is bad. If you had lost to me, they wouldn't be able to steel themselves to beat you to death. But now that you defeated me, they will certainly kill you. What should we do?" Ming Xian, fall back. A middle-aged monk came forward with a slightly grim expression as he scolded, "Junior brother Ming Xian, aren't you too kind-hearted? This is subduing the devil, yet you held back and did not take his life. Are you going to leave this devil alive to bring chaos to the world? This is a grave sin." Monk Ming Xian opened his mouth, wanting to say something when that monk swept his sleeves at him. "Are you not going to fall back and reflect on yourself?" Monk Ming Xian could only fall back feeling grieved. "When had I held back? I clearly executed my full strength." The middle-aged monk looked at Qin Mu and said, "Cult Master Qin, you're the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, while I'm merely a monk with no reputation in the Heavenly Dragon Cloister of Great Thunderclap Monastery. This isn't considered the big bullying the small, right?" Qin Mu smiled. "It's not. I'm the big that's bullying the small." The middle-aged monk chanted one of the many names of Buddha and said, "Cult Master Qin, I shall let you understand the vastness of Buddhism. Look at this dragon pillar beside you. The dragon form on this dragon pillar is one of the 100 dragons portraits of our great Thunderclap Monastery. This little monk will use it to send Devil Cult Master to paradise." Qin Mu examined the dragon pillar beside him, paying attention to the dragon portrait of a ferocious heavenly dragon. With its sharp claws clasping down, it looked like it was subduing devils. The middle-aged monk suddenly moved and came speeding over with heavy footsteps as he shouted, "I hope Cult Master can be reborn into a good family in your next life and not be a devil again." Boom! He smashed a madra downwards and thunder boomed. What he executed was Tempest of the 9 Dragons from Thunderclap 8 Strikes. His vital chi had transformed into a green dragon, whose form was none other than the heavenly dragon on the dragon pillar beside Qin Mu. The green dragon surged forward with bursts of thunder, just like a dragon king descending onto the world. Qin Mu retracted his gaze from the dragon pillar, and his vital chi suddenly burst forth. It was similar to Tempest of the 9 Dragons, and when the 2 dragon forms clashed, the roaring of dragons continued endlessly. 90 green dragons appeared around the 2 people, and they were the dragon force formed by the fist skills. Each person had 45 dragons. The 90 dragons clashed as the dragon-shaped vital chi threaded around the dragon pillars to fight. "Great cultivation, Senior Brother Tan Xan." All the monks cheered. When their voices faded away, the middle-aged monk couldn't resist letting out a grunt. He could feel Qin Mu's magic power overwhelming him as the unpredictable transformations of the dragon forces in his fist left him confused. Qin Mu had also used the dragon form on the pillar, but there were 100 changes in that form, so even though Qin Mu had used one kind, the countless changes within it made his opponent unable to guard against all of them. He has received the true teachings of our heavenly dragon cloister. The eyes of the middle-aged monk revealed despair when the 45 dragon forces formed by his vital qi instantly disintegrated. The 45 dragon forces from Qin Mu merged into one and rushed at his chest with a whoosh. Monk Tan Xian's expression changed, and his chest exploded with a bang. 45 dragon forces burst from his body, and 49 ferocious dragons' heads opened their jaws wide to roar angrily at everyone. The blood light scattered all around, and a lot of fresh blood flew in all directions, landing on the faces and clothes of the monks. Qin Mu shook his head. If you don't have any murderous intentions, I will hold back and not harm your life. But if you insist on killing me, I won't hold back. The monks were all in a daze. Suddenly, a monk pointed at Qin Mu and said in anger, he used techniques of the devil path to kill senior brother Tan Xian. What he used were the techniques of the devil path. Qin Mu's gaze landed on him, and he said slowly, Thunderclap 8 strikes is a devil skill? I'm in 5 elements realm and he is in 6 directions realm, and I used the same move as him to kill him, yet you guys don't want to admit that his skill was inferior, so you say it's the devil path? Rulai, your disciples have shamed you. Deluding people with lies, I'll kill you. A voice shouted out angrily, and a yellow-robed monk came rushing over with boundless vital qi surging about him. He had the cultivation of 6 directions realm, and his technique was incomparably overbearing, his power like rolling thunder. Qin Mu didn't bother to look at him and raised his hand to send Junior Protector's sword out. Sword lights burst forth as the sun set in surging river. The yellow-robed monk was instantly filled with thousands of holes and his corpse landed on the ground. With an ice-cold expression, Qin Mu said, This is Sunset Sword skill of Yuan Empire. A monk pounced behind him, wanting to land a fatal blow, but a gate suddenly opened behind Qin Mu's body. It was Gate of Heaven Influence. The monk rushed into the gate and saw the light of a lamp shining in the distance. The soul of that monk was instantly sucked into Yudu and left with the boat. Qin Mu closed the Gate of Heaven Influence behind him and said coldly, This isn't a technique of the devil path as well. This is Yudu's Gate of Heaven Influence. Kill this devil. Another monk came rushing over, and Qin Mu punched in his direction. Sa-mo yi. The soul of that monk was dragged out of his body and disintegrated in the air. Qin Mu then said angrily, This is a technique of the devil path. Do you understand? I'm absolutely not an expert in techniques of the devil path. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 252. Monk Ming Xian. Kill the heavenly devil cult master and take revenge for our senior brothers. Everyone's emotions were stirred up at the same time, and they came swarming over at Qin Mu like bees. He frowned slightly, and his body trembled. 1,000-armed Buddha burst forth, and the Buddha rays shone brilliantly with incomparably resounding Buddha voice lingering around heavenly dragon's cloister. Qin Mu was like an unmovable Buddha withstanding attacks from all directions. With exploding bangs that rang out continuously, the monks flew off in all directions. They smashed into the dragon pillars, and some of them split into 3-5 pieces on the spot. Qin Mu shook his body, and the 1,000 arms that were both in front and behind him vanished. The Buddha rays also vanished. He swept his gaze over the monks that were lying everywhere and brushed his sleeves. This is the Thunderclap 8 strikes of your great Thunderclap monastery. Is this technique of the devil path too? Technique is only righteous when used righteously. When used for evil, even Thunderclap 8 strikes or Rulai's Mahayana Sutra will become of the devil. Old Ma coughed and looked towards the flabbergasted old monk Jing Ming beside him. Senior brother, your heavenly dragon cloister is getting a little messy. I think we should go take a stroll through Heart Meditation Cloister. Old monk Jing Ming looked at Qin Mu resentfully. Most of the monks that Qin Mu had beaten and killed were his disciples. However, since old Ma and Blind was beside him, he didn't dare to make a move recklessly. He was especially worried about the blind man beside him. Even though that man's eye sockets were empty, He could feel a murderous intent that circled his throat whenever he wanted to make a move. If he really dared to make a move, he was certain that the bamboo cane of this blind man would pierce his throat the next instant. His realized Mahayana Sutra had a flaw which left a weak spot at his throat, and no matter how he changed it, it didn't get fixed. The other old monks of Heavenly Dragon Cloister also didn't dare to make a move. While standing beside Old Ma and Blind, they felt like there were two Mount Merus pressing down on them. If they made a move, their bodies would be smashed into pieces. Cold sweat broke out on Monk Jingming's forehead, and he said, "Junior brother, your disciple killed my monks of Heavenly Dragon Cloister and even destroyed some 100 dragons' portraits." Old Ma remained silent. Blind said calmly as he propped himself on his bamboo cane, "Senior brother Jingming, Heavenly Dragon Cloister being destroyed is your own fault. If you didn't point out that Moore was the devil cult master, this wouldn't have happened. Don't blow things up. Once it happens, the mess won't be so easy to clean up." A droplet of cold sweat rolled down Monk Jingming's forehead as he coughed. His voice was like a loud bell when he said, "Cult Master Qin is a guest from afar. Do not be impudent, fall back." Once he had said that, the monks over by the reliefs seemed relieved and immediately helped their companions that were laying on the ground. Old Ma said, "Moor, come back." Blind beamed at the youth. "You fought, destroyed, and also lectured. We are guests, so it's not good to be too impudent." Old Ma said we should take a stroll around Heart Meditation Cloister. "Won't you come along?" Qin Mu acknowledged their words and bowed to Monk Ming Xian. "Little monk, if you can't stay in Great Thunderclap Monastery any longer, come find me in Heavenly Saint Cult." Monk Ming Xian was bewildered. "How can I not stay here any longer? My master treats me very well, and these senior and junior brother take good care of me as well. I won't turn bad. You too, don't be the devil cult master anymore. Won't it be better to abandon evil and turn good? Buddhism says that the sea of bitterness has no bounds. Repent and the shore will be at hand." Qin Mu shook his head and said firmly, "You are a true monk. Sometimes, true monks are not tolerated in the monastery of fake monks. When the monastery can't tolerate you anymore, you will have to go find your tathata, your perfect awakening. Read less Buddhist scriptures. Most of those that write them have never been Rulai, and if they can't become Buddha, how can they guide you down that path? Destroy the Buddha and Great Thunderclap Monastery in your heart, and you will become your own Buddha. The world will become your Great Thunderclap Monastery, and all living things will become your Tao friends, your senior brothers." He stretched his finger out and touched Monk Ming Xian on his heart with a smile. "Here lies a real Buddha." He then touched Monk Ming Xian at the heart of his brows. "Here lies a fake Buddha. Don't let your belief become your devil, your restraints, and the obstruction to your perception. What you should do is lift your head to face the world and have a clear conscience. Place a scale in your heart and let it become your principle when weighing good and bad, right and wrong, righteous and evil, Buddha and devil. Walk outside more to see what people do and not what the Buddhist scriptures say. It's impossible to become Buddha by only staying in the monastery and thinking about good and evil." Monk Ming Xian's mind was blown, and he seemed to be deep in thought. Qin Mu turned around to walk to Old Ma. On his way, he greeted Monk Jingming. "Sorry, great masters, for disturbing your peace." Monk Jingming returned his greeting and said, "Devil cult master is courteous. Their cultivations aren't there, and cult master's devil nature is too great. You're good at bewitching people's hearts and ruthless in your attacks. A natural old devil." Qin Mu shook his head. "The cultivation of my mind is still shallow. If people want to kill me, I can only retaliate. The state of mind of you great masters is profound. If people wanted to kill you, would you retaliate?" When he finished saying this, his gaze turned unfriendly and Junior Protector Sword came whooshing out of its sheath. The gaze of old Monk Jingming and the rest landed on the shining sword blade, and they shook their heads slowly. Qin Mu returned the treasured sword back into its sheath and let out a pent-up breath before smiling. "I thought that you eminent monks that have achieved Tao had achieved the state of not being afraid of life and death, not afraid of honor and disgrace. But you are still the same as me, an ordinary human that has a devil nature. Farewell. Grandpa Ma, Grandpa Blind, what kind of place is Heart Meditation Cloister? Old Ma brought them away while saying, Heart Meditation Cloister is where great Thunderclap Monastery's monks cultivate their hearts. The cultivation in that place is different from here. For cultivation, monks will first cultivate their hearts. There are many monks there who cultivate unspoken meditation. Blind let out a sigh of relief and smiled. It's good that they don't cultivate speaking. This saves the effort of talking about the acts of monks in reality while they talk about Buddhist teachings. After all, when you want to talk to them about tidying up their sect, they will talk to you about Buddhist teachings. If you talk to them about logic, they will talk to you about Buddhist teachings. But if you talk to them about Buddhist teachings, they will come over to beat you. These Buddhist believers can't even do what they preach. Old Ma hesitated and stopped. In that case, let's not go to Heart Mediation Cloister. Qin Mu was bewildered and cried out, Are the monks in Heart Meditation Cloister like this as well? Old Ma shook his head. There's still some who don't cultivate unspoken meditation in Heart Meditation Cloister. It's good that you tagged along, since if I was the only one here, they would definitely come to nag at me. But you are the devil cult master, so they will want to nag at you more. And if they can't convince you, what happened in Heavenly Dragon Cloister will be reenacted. Blind shook his head. In that case, let's not go. Great Thunderclap Monastery is full of fake monks, with few that can do what they preach. As long as you say that they do something wrong, they will quarrel with you. The hardest thing to do is to convince a person. They can't break the obstruction in their awareness and always like to complicate the simplest logic, leaving you befuddled. If you followed their topic, you would have certainly lost. Old Ma said, The best logic is still in truth. In the end, it comes down to what is done. In this world, there truly are not many real monks. Most of them are fake. Those that open their mouths and quote classics like spewing out a deluge of heavenly flowers. They only know how to speak and not do. It's already fortunate if there is one true monk among 100. Rulai is old and has neglected the teachings. Lately, he seems to be lacking the strength even if he has the mind to do it. Old Ma originally didn't like to talk much, but since he was revisiting his old haunts, his words subconsciously grew in number. Monk Jingming looked at them walking farther away, then glanced at his own companions in dismay. Evil nature. This heavenly devil cult master truly has an evil nature. An old monk sighed. Rulai wants him to stay in the monastery, but I'm afraid this isn't the luck of our great Thunderclap Monastery. Another abbot said, I can't understand why Rulai wants him to stay. He's the devil cult master, which devil cult master of heavenly devil cult is easily swayed. Old monk Jingming said, You guys don't have to guess blindly. Rulai's intention is to use Buddhist teachings to influence him, to let him know the vastness of Buddhism, abandoning evil to become good, converting him to Buddhism. Rulai had thought to take him as a disciple, yet heavenly devil cult's patriarch reached out first and snatched him away. The old monks were all bewildered. They knew that he and old Rulai had a deep master and disciple bond. So many things were not hidden from him. Because of this, they trusted his words and asked, There was such an incident? That Kakara staff is a keepsake, yet he gave it away to a monkey. Rulai felt that the destiny was broken, so he didn't go find him. But actually, there's a second reason as to why Rulai made him stay. Heavenly Devil Cult is starting to prosper because they have this cult master Qin. He also has a close relationship with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. As to the snow disaster, Heavenly Devil Cult Master was farsighted and ordered the entire Devil Cult to support the Emperor in sending disaster relief. Now, with the Emperor and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor as the arms of Heavenly Devil Cult, it will definitely prosper. The old monks' expressions changed, and they stamped their feet. What must we do? Old monk Jingming said, If this cult master Qin got trapped in Great Thunderclap Monastery, the momentum of Heavenly Devil Cult will be broken. With the devil weakened and Buddha rising, our Great Thunderclap Monastery will be fortuitous. Even if Heavenly Devil Cult will try to find another Devil Cult Master, they probably won't find another one as outstanding as him. As for the third intention, there seemed to be Buddha rays flickering on and off in his eyes as he said faintly, is because of the next Rulai. Old Rulai didn't have the boldness of heavenly devil cult patriarch to choose a little brat as the cult master, but he still admires Ma Wangshan and feels that he's the most suitable to inherit his cassock and alms bowl. What a pity! The other old monks looked at one another and said in unison, "What a pity!" Little monk Ming Xian came walking over muddle-headed and said to old monk Jing Ming, "Master, I—" Old monk Jing Ming saw that he was in a daze and straightened him out. "Good child, you have been bewitched by the words of heavenly devil cult master. A devil is best at bewitching the hearts of people, and it's even worse if he's the heavenly devil cult master. But I feel that what he said made sense." Old monk Jing Ming laughed loudly. "Good child, there are many Buddhist scriptures in our monastery that judge devils. Go and see what your seniors say. You will then straighten out your thinking without me needing to enlighten you." Monk Ming Xian was still ill at ease. Old monk Jing Ming frowned. He could see that the impact Qin Mu's words had brought to this little monk was too strong, so it was best to give him tasks that didn't require much thinking. Go and help your senior brothers up, then lift the dragon pillars up. Even though they are broken, they can still be fixed. Monk Ming Xian acknowledged his words and went to help his senior brothers of Heavenly Dragon Cloister and treat the injured. However, those monks didn't give him a pleasant look and drove him away by brushing their sleeves. Monk Ming Xian was stunned. He went to lift up the collapsed dragon pillar, but a couple monks walked over and pushed him to the side. When he squeezed forward again, he was pushed down to the ground. He looked at everyone in a daze before getting up quietly to go to the depository of Buddhist texts to read Buddhist scriptures. However, he couldn't absorb any logic that he read. Old monk Jing Ming was tidying up Heavenly Dragon Cloister when he suddenly saw monk Ming Xian carrying a little bundle down the mountain. His heart moved slightly, and he called out, "Ming Xian, have you brought your Buddhist scriptures?" Monk Ming Xian stopped and said, "Master, I brought a Heart Sutra." Monk Jing Ming nodded. "Go down the mountain and return back soon. The Sea of Bitterness has no bounds. Repent and Mount Meru will be at hand, where Great Thunderclap Monastery is." Monk Ming Xian knelt down and gave 2 kowtows to him before turning to leave. Behind him, the bell of Great Thunderclap Monastery rang as the sun was high up in the middle of the sky. Its light cast a long shadow of the little monk down the mountain. Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 253, Fo Xian. When monk Ming Xian came to Eternal Peace Empire, he could still see clouds in the sky. The influence of the snow disaster had yet to fade, and soldiers continued to send disaster relief everywhere. The victims were still escaping for their lives while many bandits were plundering houses. Starving people were fleeing all over the place, unable to find any way to get by. "There's a white and tender monk here." The starving people were delighted when they saw monk Ming Xian. "We can eat him without washing." He immediately ran away. The starving people, who've been lacking food for quite a long time, could only give up since they couldn't catch up to him. One of them said, "I told you not to make a noise. When he was close, we could have just pounced on him and taken a bite. This way, that white and tender monk wouldn't have been able to run away." Monk Ming Xian's heart was alarmed, and he trembled in fear. After starving for 2-3 days, he still couldn't find anything to fill his stomach. Yet, he had been chased over a dozen times by other starving people. Great Thunderclap Monastery was serene, but the outside world was vicious, with famine everywhere. Such things were not written about in the Buddhist scriptures, since only when one was full and warm could they think about Buddhist scriptures. The Heart Sutra that he had brought along was also useless. It couldn't solve his problem of having no food. His current whereabouts were slightly farther away from civilization, so it was too far for the imperial court to help. There were many victims of the disaster and starving people, as well as many corpses of those who had died strewn across the roadside. There were also wild wolves and dogs which had become demons by eating human corpses. They formed packs and went around hunting those that were still alive. Dogs were normally tame, but when a disaster came, they did not scoff at human flesh. They reproduced fast, and were even fiercer than wolves. "This is hell." Monk Ming Xian shed tears when he saw demons and corpses everywhere. "Monk, do you have a child?" A thin victim with a pale face grabbed onto his clothes while holding in her embrace a child. Her face was pale and bony, starved. "Give your child to me. I'll give mine to you. You can eat my child and I'll eat yours." Monk Ming Xian screamed and broke free to escape. "Rulai!" Monk Ming Xian ran countless miles until he could no longer run. He then knelt down onto the floor and shouted sorrowfully, "Are you not seeing this human world in Great Thunderclap Monastery?" He walked forward muddle-headed, stumbling with every other step. When he saw a monastery in front of him, he went inside and saw a couple of humans hanging from the roof. They were stripped of their skin from head to toe, and there were some monks that were squatting in the corner, holding a metal basin with meat. When they saw him, they immediately said in astonishment, "Abbot, Abbot, there's a monk that's been left on his own." The old abbot came out in a hurry. "Where are you from, monk? There aren't a lot of rations left here, and even the land has been gnawed a few times by the starving people. Yuan Ding, give him a bowl of food and let him leave." My Buddha of compassion. A basin of human flesh was placed in front of Monk Ming Xian, stunning him, and he felt the Buddha in his mind crumble and collapse. He jumped up and frantically smashed the Buddha statue nearby, pushing it down and smashing it into smithereens. The other monks came over in a hurry to stop him and said angrily, "This monk is crazy. He's been possessed by the devil, to blaspheme against Buddha, to deceive and destroy the ancestors." Monk Ming Xian let them beat him and didn't retaliate. Soon he turned into a bloody mess. At that moment, a group of officers with men arrived and slew the monks in the monastery. The monks were eating human flesh. They are really becoming lawless. "General, there's still a monk here who doesn't look human anymore from all the beatings." They're still breathing." The soldiers brought Monk Ming Xian for the general to take a look. "He won't die." "Monk, I see you have the ability. Why didn't you retaliate when they beat you?" Monk Ming Xian said with a stupefied expression. "I have flaws all over me." The general smiled. "It's good to have flaws. Who doesn't have them? Only experts know that they have flaws. You have some ability, so follow me to protect the land." These immigrants even gnaw on the land to dig out the grains that were just planted. "Come people, burn this monastery down." The soldiers came forward to set fire, and soon the monastery started burning. Monk Ming Xian nodded, but then he remembered something. He immediately ran toward the fire. "My scripture!" The general ordered his men to hold him back. "What scripture do you have? How thick is it?" "Only 2 pages. Such a cold weather, yet such a thin scripture. Can't even be used for a fire." The general raised a single finger, and sorrow could be seen in his eyes. "We just need to have 1 season of harvest, and all the people in the world will have things to eat and no longer starve. This world will become human world once more and not hell. Therefore, protecting the land is of utmost importance. We can't let the immigrants ruin it. When the world is peaceful once more, you can go and read your Buddhist scriptures. When that time comes, I'll give you bucket loads of them myself so you can read whichever you want." Monk Ming Xian was stunned. Only read scriptures in times of peace? Then how could they save those that were suffering? How could they enlighten all living things? If they could not be used during times of chaos, able only to save people from suffering during times of peace, what use did they have? Cult Master Qin is right. Those that write Buddhist scriptures are not really roulees. When Monk Ming Xian left with the officers and their men, his plain cotton clothing and grass shoes that were once white were covered in bloodstains. "From today onwards, I'll be my own rulai. I'll write my own Buddhist scriptures." In Great Thunderclap Monastery, the bell's ring was long and drawn out, and Qin Mu looked toward the west. There he saw great ruins which had been through a grave disaster. He then looked toward the east, and there lay Eternal Peace Empire, which was experiencing a snow disaster. Great Thunderclap Monastery was right in the middle of both of them, not receiving any disaster or calamity. It was indeed a good place. The monks on the mountain had no worries and only needed to concentrate on studying Buddhism, without being mindful of the disasters outside. Great Thunderclap Monastery has over 4,000 cloisters, Heavenly Dragon Cloister and Heart Meditation Cloister being the more high-end cloisters. Every cloister is responsible for different things, and what they comprehend is different. If there are any outstanding disciples, they will be taught by the old monks, so they won't need to move around from cloister to cloister, Old Ma explained. For example, let's take that monk Ming Xian. He was specially taught by monk Jing Ming, so he had a teacher to guide him and was more outstanding among the other monks. Those with the highest comprehension and Buddha nature, meanwhile, are taught personally by Rulai. Qin Mu looked down and saw the mountain's peaks were like petals of a lotus, surrounding the main golden peak which was in the center. There were tens of thousands of temples and monasteries with incense burning in front of them. Great Thunderclap Monastery does have its good points. It has quite a similarity with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor on the teaching of disciples, Qin Mu said while nodding. Old Ma brought them around the mountain to visit the wonders there. At this moment, he led them toward an awe-inspiring pagoda. Heaven's cloister's first heaven is Yamaraja Cloister. The second heaven is Sagara Nagaraja Cloister, which represents a state of mind in Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. If you went to the topmost realm, there would be Sakra Cloister and Brahma Cloister there. If you would to count from that top, Brahma Cloister would be the first heaven. Qin Mu raised his head and was shaken. This pagoda was way too majestic. It was a magnificent sight with an air about it of truly standing above mountains and rivers. They walked into the pagoda and came to the first cloister, Yamaraja Cloister, where they saw a few young monks were cultivating Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. An old monk immediately came forward and said, "Ma Wangshan, we just want to walk around here." The old monk had a troubled expression when he said, "This is where we cultivate Rulai's Mahayana Sutra." Suddenly, another voice spoke up. "Senior brother, our Buddha said that there's nothing to hide in Great Thunderclap Monastery. We can let them go anywhere." The old monk looked over and immediately said, "Fozi." A young monk walked in and greeted Old Ma, "Senior brother." He then also greeted Qin Mu, "Cult Master Qin." Qin Mu returned the greeting and smiled. "So it's Fozi Fo Xian. I saw you outside Imperial College once, but we've never met me before." This monk had a clean round head and gave off a feeling of something precious. His eyes were bright like jewels and his earlobes were like droplets of water. A red mark was drawn at the heart of his brows, which was very extraordinary. He was none other than Fozi Fo Xian. Fozi Fo Xian had once followed old monk Jing Ming to block the gate of Imperial College, and Qin Mu had went to take a look. Because the young patriarch didn't give him any benefits and Qin Mu still had to paralyze the green bull, they didn't exchange blows. When Imperial Physician Yu and the rest had paralyzed Imperial College, Si Yunxiang had sneaked out to fight and forced Fozi Fo Xian to retreat after being defeated. Fozi Fo Xian sized up Qin Mu and saw that even though this heavenly devil cult master looked like a gentleman that was polite, cultured, and refined, he had a very invasive gaze. He could feel a wild and unruly bearing bursting forth from his gaze, stabbing into the inner hearts of others. This made his heart leap up uncontrollably. "The devil nature of this person is quite serious," Fo Xian said to the old monk. "Rulai said that there's no problem even if we show cult master Qin Rulai's Mahayana Sutta. Without Buddha nature, there's absolutely no way to cultivate Rulai's Mahayana Sutra of our great Thunderclap Monastery. What's more, Senior Brother Ma also used Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, so if he wanted to teach cult master Qin, he would have done so a long time ago. Two benefactors and Senior Brother Ma, please study to your heart's content." The old monk calmed down and started explaining to the little monks the marvel of the first heaven, Yamaraja heaven. He no longer had any qualms about Qin Mu and the rest being here. After a moment, Qin Mu comprehended something and used what he just heard about Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. He felt cold and warmth in his body, as if he had descended into hell and become Yamaraja. Fo Xian saw precious rays suddenly coming out from the youth's body, and his heart jumped slightly. Those are Buddha rays. He had comprehended the first heaven of Rulai's Mahayana Sutra just by standing here? Could he have a Buddha nature? Isn't he a devil? Old Ma also saw the Buddha rays that had suddenly burst forth from his body and said, "Mu'er, you have already achieved the first heaven of Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, so there's no need to listen here anymore. Let us head to the next level." Qin Mu followed Old Ma and Blind to Sagara Nagaraja cloister, and Fozi Foxian hurried after them. There was also an old monk here talking about all kinds of marvels of Sagara Nagaraja heaven. Not long later, Fozi Foxian saw the Buddha rays on Qin Mu's body becoming stronger. He was greatly shaken. It was impossible for people with devil nature to cultivate Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. Qin Mu was the heavenly devil cult master, a devil among devils, but he could actually cultivate to the second heaven of Rulai's Mahayana Sutra just by standing and listening for a while. Wasn't that just too shocking? One has to know that the reason Foxian was called Fozi was because he had a pure and limpid heart of a newborn. Back when he had first come to this place, he had also managed to cultivate Rulai's Mahayana Sutra to the fourth heaven in a short time, shaking Great Thunderclap Monastery. He was then honored with the name of Fozi. From what he heard, it had been the same for Ma Wangshan as well. Foxian had heard about his legend, and it was rumored that Ma Wangshan had managed to cultivate to the fifth heaven in one shot. Due to this, old Rulai had had extremely high expectations for him, grooming him to become his replacement. The devil of heavenly devil cult can't have as great a Buddha nature as me, Foxian thought to himself. When they came to the third heaven, Qin Mu comprehended the mental state of Khandra from Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, cultivating Khandra heaven. Buddha rays appeared behind his head, and they were as splendid as moonlight. Yet there were not many monks who had cultivated to this heaven in the whole Khandra cloister. When in the fourth heaven, Qin Mu comprehended the mental state of Surya, and Buddha rays shone from the back of his head like a blazing sun. He was like an eminent monk who had achieved his Tao. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 254. The Root of the Trouble. Foxian drew in a shaky breath. He had also broken through 4 heavens one after another, cultivating to the mental state of Surya. When he reached Riverside cloister, he couldn't cultivate it right away, yet even so, it was enough for him to be called Fozi. Didn't this mean that Qin Mu also had the Buddha heart and was no inferior to him? If Qin Mu continued forward and broke through the mental state of Riverside heaven, wouldn't it meant that this devil's Buddha heart was even stronger than Foxian's own? How could a devil have a greater Buddha nature than someone who cultivates Buddhism? After coming to Riverside cloister, Qin Mu listened to the scripture, and not long later, flames of light came from his body. Foxian's mind was blown, and he became muddle-headed. Qin Mu, this devil, actually managed to cultivate to the fifth heaven in one go, which was the same aptitude as Ma Wangshan's, the same kind of Buddha heart. How was that possible? He was a devil. He was clearly a devil, so it should have been impossible for him to cultivate Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. Fozi Foxian composed himself. He was the monk with the highest aptitude and comprehension in the last 100 years and had the best Buddha heart, so he had never expected to be surpassed by a devil. Everyone came to Haridi cloister, and Qin Mu was finally got stuck. He didn't manage to cultivate the sixth heaven of Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. Foxian was dazed. Qin Mu had cultivated 5 heavens in one go, which was already the aptitude for becoming Rulai. If he converted to Buddhism, Master would most likely choose him as the next Rulai. Foxian started to worry about his personal gains and losses. I can't let him become Rulai's disciple. The next Rulai can only be me. Once this thought was born, it could not be stopped. Fozi, I've heard that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor came here once. How many heavens did he cultivate? Qin Mu suddenly asked. Fozi Foxian composed himself and said, Imperial Preceptor's coming here is something that happened 100 or 2 years ago. I've heard from seniors in the monastery that Rulai had followed him then, and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had comprehended 7 heavens in a short while. Qin Mu jumped in shock and shook his head. As expected of the genius that appears once every 500 years, I can't compete with him. Old Ma was also astonished. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor actually managed to comprehend 7 heavens in one go? Remarkable. If he entered Buddhism, he would have become Rulai. If he entered a Tao sect, he would have become a Tao master, and if he had entered your heavenly saint cult, he would have become the sacred cult master. Such a talent. There is no one who can compare with that. Blind also exclaimed in admiration. Cripple was not treated unjustly by having his leg chopped off by him. Old Ma and Blind brought them through all levels of the 20 Heavens Pagoda, and 2-3 days passed without them noticing it. Qin Mu had listened to all 20 heavens of Rulai's Mahayana Sutra once, and had exclaimed in admiration at the exquisiteness of it all. They were no inferior to great educational heavenly devil scriptures. He had no intention of cultivating Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, but he could use other people's knowledge to improve himself. Rulai's Mahayana Sutra was worthy for him to use as a reference. Foxian looked at Qin Mu, and his gaze flickered. Cult Master Qin's aptitude isn't bad as well. Cult Master, since our great Thunderclap Monastery has shown our Rulai's Mahayana Sutra to you, I wonder if little monk can browse your great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Qin Mu took out a ball of thread from his Taotai sack and said generously, "What harm is there? Anyone in our cult can learn great educational heavenly devil scriptures, so there's no problem even if it was taught to outsiders." He pulled onto the head of the thread, giving it a gentle pull. Instantly, countless words swarmed out and rolled into the sky. Qin Mu didn't hide anything and just showed the entire great educational heavenly devil scriptures in front of Foxian. When Foxian saw the first sentence of great educational heavenly devil scriptures, his expression changed. He felt the ideals before him clashing with Buddhism's ideals. As he looked over and saw the 7 writings of creation, he couldn't help frowning. This is truly the technique of a devil cult. There's no compassion in it at all. All its teaching is evil skills. Cult Master, put it away. This little monk can't look at this. Qin Mu was bewildered, but did as asked and retrieved great educational heavenly devil scriptures, which were still a ball of thread. At this moment, a monk suddenly hurried over and spoke in a low voice to Foxian. The message astonished its recipient, and he saluted the group while remaining calm and collected. "3 benefactors, it's already late, so may the 3 of you return back to your rooms to rest." Blind yawned and said, "We're guests, so we shall comply with whatever's convenient for the host. Moor, Old Ma, let's return to our rooms to rest." The 3 of them walked out of the pagoda, and Blind suddenly said, "Just now, the monk told Foxian that the Crown Prince of Eternal Peace Empire came to request an audience with old Rulai." Qin Mu was stunned. Eternal Peace Empire's Crown Prince? What was he doing by coming to Great Thunderclap Monastery at this time? What scheme was he playing by requesting an audience with old Rulai? Blind's ears twitched, and he said, Foxian had the monk lead Eternal Peace Crown Prince to Hall of Great Strength, while he went to Thousand Buddha's Pagoda himself to inform Rulai. He entered Thousand Buddha's Pagoda, but I can't see or hear what's happening inside it. Rulai has come out and told the monks around to do their best to chant the incantations, suppressing Li Tianqing. Old Ma's expression changed slightly, and he said in a hurry, "How could the Buddhist skills of those monks suppress Li Tianqing? Rulai is careless. The 1,000 Buddhas in the pagoda are dead. So even if their energy can be excited by the incantations of the monks, it won't be enough to suppress Li Tianqing. Quick, to 1,000 Buddha's pagoda, so that Li Tianqing won't escape." The 3 of them immediately hurried towards the Golden Peak, but Qin Mu was much slower than the others. When he passed by his room, he saw the dragon Qilin still lying asleep, and the old monk beside him still reciting scriptures for him. "Fatty dragon!" Qin Mu hurriedly shouted out, and the dragon Qilin woke up and ran over, leaving the old monk behind. That old monk shouted out angrily, "Brute! No wisdom at all!" Qin Mu jumped onto the dragon Qilin's back and said, "Head to the Golden Peak at your fastest speed." "But Cult Master, you haven't given me anything to eat these days. Head to the Golden Peak as fast as you can, and I'll give you 2 buckets. Qin Mai immediately told him. The dragon Qilin was instantly motivated and dashed toward the Golden Peak in a frantic rush. Inside the 1,000 Buddha's pagoda, there were corporeal bodies of the previous Rulais, while outside there were monks sitting on the roof as well as by the windows and door. They chanted Buddhist incantations to excite the corporeal bodies of old Rulais. Through those corporeal bodies, the incantations transformed into texts with forms which were like huge dragons that flew to and fro, surging into the heart of Granny C's brows to suppress and refine her heart devil, Li Tianqing. These last couple days, old Rulai had personally led all the monks in using the Buddha nature hidden in the corporeal bodies to suppress and refine Li Tianxing. The effects could already be seen by how Granny C was waking up more and more frequently due to Li Tianxing's primordial spirit having been weakened by a lot. This was why old Rulai had been at ease to leave, handing the task over to the monks. After all, there were so many corporeal bodies of the previous Rulais to keep watch. Yet at this moment, Granny C's pupils became incomparably dark, and she chuckled. A voice that was brimming with seductiveness came from the pagoda, and it was like a lover whispering sweet nothings beside one's ears. That voice tunneled into the monks' ears, into their hearts, and instantly, all the monks' Buddha hearts were thrown into chaos as devils were born within them. "Hold on!" an old monk shouted out sternly. "Don't listen to her voice." Just as he said these words, a beautiful face popped out from the pagoda and smiled sweetly at him. A devil was born in that old monk's Buddha heart, and the wheel of Buddha rays behind his head dimmed. He then fell from the pagoda. "This is bad." Another old monk chanted out the many names of Buddha before raising his 2 fingers to stab his eyes, planning not to see Granny C's appearance. With resolution, he dug out both of his eyes, but then gentle laughter reached his ears, tunneling into his Buddha's heart and making it itch. That old monk gritted his teeth and stabbed his ears, piercing his eardrums so he couldn't hear her voice. The old monk's head was covered in blood as he loudly chanted Buddhist scriptures, exciting the corporeal bodies of the previous Rulais that were in the pagoda. Since he couldn't see and hear, he wasn't aware of the monks falling off from the pagoda and crashing loudly against the floor. Suddenly, he felt a soft and slender lily-white hand that had the perfect temperature caressing his face and his bald head. The body of the old monk trembled, and the Buddha rays behind his head suddenly dispersed. He fell from Thousand Buddha's pagoda as well. Qin Mu pushed the dragon Qilin to rush to the golden peak only to see all the monks falling off and crashing into the ground. Old Ma and Blind broke through to chase after Granny C, who had already escaped the suppression of Thousand Buddha's pagoda. The speed of the 3 of them was extremely fast, and they disappeared in a flash. Even the dragon Qilin could only watch the dush behind them, having no way to catch up. Qin Mu was stunned. "You guys!" The golden peak was in a mess, and old Ma and Blind had both rushed away, leaving him to sit by himself on the back of the dragon Qilin. The youth was stunned for a moment, then said resentfully, "I wonder if Great Thunderclap Monastery will be willing to let me, this heavenly devil cult master, go. It's not a good feeling to be in the enemy's camp without any elder to support you." Just as old Rulai sat down in the Hall of Great Strength, thinking to chat with Eternal Peace Crown Prince, a monk came rushing in to report, "Revered one of the world, Li Tianxing has escaped." Stunned, old Rulai shook his head. "I've underestimated him. I thought that as an upright devil cult master, he would find it disdainful to learn the art of charm. Never would have I expected that he would still have tricks up his sleeves. Since I can't suppress and refine him, let heavenly devil cult master leave the mountain." Eternal Peace Crown Prince was astonished. "Heavenly devil cult master is in Great Thunderclap Monastery? Is he the palace grandee of my imperial court?" Old Rulai nodded in agreement. "It's him." Eternal Peace Crown Prince was delighted. "Buddha, this person is heavenly devil cult master, one who did much evil, so he can't be let off. Why don't we just rid this world of that evil on this mountain?" Old Rulai shook his head. "He had a favor to ask from me by coming up the mountain, so I had him stay. However, since I couldn't do what he requested, I will have to allow him to leave the mountain. Our Great Thunderclap Monastery cannot act like a devil." Eternal Peace Crown Prince still wanted to say more, but Foxine got up and said, "Revered one of the world, I shall send Cult Master Qin down the mountain." Old Rulai nodded and looked towards Eternal Peace Crown Prince. "Crown Prince, this old monk knows your intentions for coming and also knows what you are planning. It's because this concerns all living things under this world that this old monk had come over in a hurry and let Li Tianxing take advantage of this. You should have met Teacher Poor and the rest, right?" Eternal Peace Crown Prince nodded. "They can't handle my father, so we earnestly request Buddha to lend a hand." Old Rulai smiled. His Majesty's 9 Dragons Monarch technique has already been cultivated to its maximum, so there are indeed not many people who can handle His Majesty, but this old monk is one. At this moment, Foxin came to find Qin Mu. Cult Master Qin, revered one of the world, ordered me to send you down the mountain. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 255. Severe Devil Nature. Thanks for the trouble, Foxi. Qin Mu expressed his thanks. Since Foxin followed him, he didn't ride the dragon Qilin but had jumped off to walk with him. This was courtesy. The sky is already dark. We should have let Cult Master remain here for another night. The two people walked down the mountain without hurry. Even though their footsteps weren't fast, they were still 10 times faster than ordinary people. Foxin said, even though Cult Master Qin only spent a little time in Great Thunderclap Monastery, you have created quite a mess. There are some monks that have lost their lives while others return to their normal lives. But even so, Rulai still lets Cult Master leave the mountain. Qin Mu smiled. Rulai has a wide breadth of mind which I admire very much, as expected of the number 1 awakened of Buddhism. Rulai had abandoned sectarian bias and was willing to save Granny C, for which I'm very grateful to him. Foxin smiled back at him. Cult Master, I would like to take another look at Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scripture. Is that possible? Qin Mu took out Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures and opened them up, revealing countless passages of text. Foxin browsed through them as he walked and shook his head. Truly harmful skills. Every divine art and every technique teaches how to take the lives of others, and even the methods of cultivation are very evil. Qin Mu was astonished. Foxi, why do you say that? Look at this heavenly devil creation technique, which strips skins to make them into clothes. The souls, spirits, qi, and blood all have to be sealed in order to make clothes that can be constantly changing. Isn't this an evil skill? Qin Mu smiled. Heavenly devil creation technique mainly cultivates the inner body. Using this technique to seal your own soul, spirit, qi, and blood can prevent outside magic from invading you. It isn't to strip skin and make clothes. If one wanted to transform, they could do it by matching heavenly god creation technique with spirit creation technique. Foxin shook his head. Cult Master, you are the one who has comprehended wrongly, who hasn't heard about the evils of heavenly devil technique. You are still young, so how much could you have read? It's thus normal that you have comprehended wrongly. Take a look at this pre-celestial creation technique. This is clearly a devil technique that can only be cultivated by plucking the pre-celestial qi of a newborn child. Those who cultivate this technique will never age, but how many newborn babies must be harmed for that? Qin Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he corrected him, the monk. The so-called pre-celestial qi isn't referring to infants, but to the state of infants. Before an infant is born, they are in pre-celestial state, the beginning of yin and yang, preserving their origin. A placenta connects pre-celestial to the mother, so there's no need to breathe. Thus their souls are pure and flawless. Foxi, you have understood wrongly. There's no need to eat the placenta or the infant to cultivate this technique. Instead, you have to treat yourself like an infant. Foxin shook his head. Cult Master, you are still going to deny it? Isn't this Earth Aeon creation technique a devil technique used for gathering devil flames from the sun and earth to refine all living things? The more people are refined to death, the more damned souls there will be, and the greater power the skill will have. In the end, the devil flames will turn into hell, all for the Aeon of Earth. Qin Mu smiled. This technique has the word creation, so it's used to cultivate spirit, to strengthen one's primordial spirit. Using other people's souls to strengthen one's primordial spirit. How's that not a devil technique? Foxin asked. Qin Mu shook his head and said, this technique can be combined with pre-celestial creation technique, preserving the origin of one's heart and spirit, turning oneself into an infant state and connecting oneself to the earth. By plucking the qi of Mother Earth, one can strengthen their primordial spirit as well as create all living things. Foxi, I have been cultivating great educational heavenly devil scriptures these few days and my spirit embryo is abnormally strong. The effects of these two techniques are not small. You can also cultivate them. Foxin smiled. I won't cultivate, I just want to criticize. Qin Mu took a deep look at him. Foxian looked magnanimous and didn't seem to be lying, so Qin Mu smiled at him. In that case, Fozi may continue. Foxian continued to browse as they walked away from Great Thunderclap Monastery. Your heavenly devil cult is worthy of the devil word. The devil nature in its teachings is too heavy. These techniques, skills, and divine arts are both shocking and frightful. This technique that's called sending funeral technique. If one wants to cultivate it, are they going to exterminate an entire family? Qin Mu shook his head. This technique is actually the technique of our heavenly saint cult's funeral hall, and what they cultivate are paper humans and paper horses. They help people arrange funerals, drive away ghosts, and bring good fortune to their descendants. Fozi, if you're going to look at the scriptures with prejudice, there's no need for you to browse anymore. I'm afraid your Buddha's heart will be spoiled. Foxian laughed. Cult Master Qin, my Great Thunderclap Monastery has already shown you Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, and you don't want me to read great educational heavenly devil scriptures? Qin Mu smiled slightly. All right then, as you wish. The two of them continued down the mountain, and the more Foxian read, the more he shook his head. When they reached the bottom of the mountain, it was already the dead of the night. This time, he had managed to read more than half of great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Qin Mu looked around. In front of him was Eternal Peace Empire. If he had gone down the other side of the mountain, they would have faced great ruins, but since it was shrouded by darkness at this time, it couldn't be stepped into. The New Year's was already over, and it was the second month of the year. In the sky, the stars were sparse, but the moon was shining brightly. It was a crescent that gave off a serene light that was brighter than usual. This was near Great Thunderclap Monastery, so the dark clouds above had been long removed by the eminent monks. Because of that, the sky was especially clear. There were some villages nearby that believed in Buddhism and worshipped Buddha. However, the land around here belonged to Great Thunderclap Monastery, so all the people around were farmers. They didn't have to pay rent to the imperial court, but send offerings to Great Thunderclap Monastery for using the land to produce crops. Qin Mu wanted to return to eternal peace. The first reason for that was to continue cultivating, while the second was to manage Heavenly Saint cult. Li Tianxing had also run in the direction of Eternal Peace Empire when he had broken free from Thousand Buddha's pagoda. Foxian was still reading great educational heavenly devil scriptures when the two of them came to the mountain gate. The monk guarding the gate was sitting with a lantern while an Elifure strange beast was sleeping next to him. There were also some retainers nearby, who got up the moment they saw them. Foxian went up to inquire about their origin, and one of them answered, "We are the retainers of the Crown Prince. Since we're all ordinary people, we can't enter the monastery and have to stay outside to wait. I'm sending the devil cult master down the mountain, so I don't have the time to entertain everyone. I beg your pardon." Foxian called the Elifure over and led this strange beast over. "Cult Master Qin, I'll need another hour to finish reading. If Cult Master doesn't mind, I would like to continue to send you off. The Elifure of my Great Thunderclap Monastery listens to Dharma all year round and has a profound cultivation, so it can definitely match up to your Dragon Qilin." Qin Mu revealed a smile. "It's best this way." The Elifure and the Dragon Qilin moved at the same pace, while Buddha rays appeared behind Foxian's head to shine onto great educational heavenly devil scriptures for him to continue studying it. Devil Cult Master? The eyes of the retainers of the Crown Prince lighted up, and they asked, "Which Devil Cult Master?" The monk who was guarding the mountain gate said, "Which one could it be? That is Cult Master Qin of Heavenly Devil Cult. He came with a tumultuous momentum and bewitched many of the monks in the monastery to return to normal lives. During these couple of days, there were monks continuously leaving the mountain to return to normal lives, some of them being my senior uncles." The retainers looked at one another and smiled. "We can find our merit here. Heavenly Devil Cult killed Sun Nantua and eradicated Nantua Monastery, and we actually managed to meet him here of all places. Go! Let's go and get our merit. Good men, don't do evil and kill people, don't harm Fozi," the gate monk said in a panic. The retainers of the crown prince smiled. Don't worry. Qin Mu sat on the back of the dragon Qilin and kept looking up at the moon in the sky, bobbing up and down as the dragon Qilin moved. Now was the 8th day of the 2nd month, and the crescent was very curved. Soon, Foxian let out a breath of relief and returned great educational heavenly devil scriptures to Qin Mu. Little monk has finally finished reading. Those scriptures are truly a devil classic. Why does cult master Qin keeps looking at the moon in the sky? There's no moon in great ruins. Qin Mu retracted his gaze and gently touched great educational heavenly devil scriptures. They turned into a ball of thread, and he smiled. Thus, every time I see the moon, I find it very beautiful and captivating. Furthermore, I want to see the boundary of Great Thunderclap Monastery. Foxian was slightly stunned and asked curiously, "The boundary of Great Thunderclap Monastery?" Qin Mu nodded. When he saw the moon being blocked by the dark clouds in the sky, he leaped off the back of the dragon Qilin. Half of the place where he had landed was lit up by the moon, while the other half was in the darkness left by the dark clouds. The boundary of Great Thunderclap Monastery should be around here. Please take a look, Fozi. The eminent monks of Great Thunderclap Monastery removed all the dark clouds in their territory. So the dark clouds here belong to Eternal Peace Empire and have nothing to do with Great Thunderclap Monastery. Foxian also jumped down from the Elephur and raised his head to look at the sky before looking at the ground. He said in astonishment, "I never knew Great Thunderclap Monastery had a boundary. In this case, there should be a boundary stone nearby." Qin Mu's interest was spiked and he smiled. "Why don't we find it?" Foxian seemed to also have the temperament of a youth, and the two young men started to search around. After some time, they found a broken cliff which was a mountain peak. Only half of the 30 yards tall mountain peak was left, and on it, a few words were written. They said, "Great Thunderclap Monastery Boundary." Foxian clapped his hands together and laughed. "There's really such a boundary stone. Even though I'm a monk of Great Thunderclap Monastery, I've never heard seniors mentioning this before. Cult Master Qin, I've heard that Heavenly Devil Cult doesn't cultivate the heart and doesn't have much requirements regarding the frame of mind. The techniques of your Heavenly Devil Cult are fast to cultivate, but because you guys cultivate techniques and not the heart, you're easily possessed by the devil." While standing under this boundary stone, Qin Mu raised his head to examine the handwriting. "There's such a saying." Foxian's gaze flickered, and he said, "Buddhism techniques cultivate the heart. So if we added the fast cultivation of great educational, heavenly devil scriptures, wouldn't it be perfect?" Qin Mu was still examining the words on the boundary stone, so he said absent-mindedly, "This I do not know." Foxian looked at his back at Qin Mu's back, while he looked at the boundary stone in front. Neither of them spoke another word. Suddenly, Buddha rays shone brilliantly and a thick devil chi emanated. Under the boundary stone, the world was split by the Buddha and devil. One righteous and one evil clashed with a bang. Qin Mu turned around, and the Buddha rays behind his head shone brightly. He was like a huge yellow-robed Buddha whose every raise of the arms and every lift of the feet would result in thunder. What he executed was Rulai's Mahayana Sutra. Meanwhile, Foxian emanated the sinister devil chi as devil flames blazed around his body. What he executed was Earth Aeon creation technique. The two of them suddenly clashed under the boundary stone without saying a word. Qin Mu's vital chi created clouds above his head. Within them, 5 heavens with 10,000 Buddhas could be seen faintly. In the meantime, the devil chi around Foxian raged, and the devil flames burned more and more furiously. The two of them leaped up like rabbits and soared down like falcons under the boundary stone of Great Thunderclap Monastery. But suddenly, a loud bang rang out as Foxian grunted and moved a step back. Qin Mu took a step forward and struck with palm after palm, his every hit as heavy as the boundary stone of Great Thunderclap Monastery. Foxian moved back continuously, fresh blood flowing from his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Boom! Qin Mu smashed another palm down, and he was like a huge Buddha striking with colorless karma fire. Foxian raised his hand to receive the blow, and the sound of bone cracking could be heard. He then moved back and felt his back leaning against the boundary stone, making his heart sink. Boom! Qin Mu struck again, and Foxian gave another grunt as he crumbled and sat down under the boundary stone. He raised his hand and said, "Enough! I admit defeat." Qin Mu raised his fist and smashed down with fist after fist. After a moment he stood up, while Foxian was left a bloody mess. "Your devil nature is severe. I'm going to leave you alive to see how you'll ruin Great Thunderclap Monastery in the future." Qin Mu pulled back his fists, his fingertips dripping with blood. Looking at Foxian, who was beyond recognition, he said softly, "You misinterpret every technique you see in great educational heavenly devil scriptures, and you're more like the devil than the devil. If I leave you alive, Great Thunderclap Monastery will definitely be destroyed in your hands." Foxian still had breath and wanted to say something, but a sword light struck him at that moment. It pierced through the heart of his brows, and the flying sword penetrated his skull, nailing him to the boundary stone. As he died, he could hear a voice shouting in delight. "The devil cult master is finally dead. The devil nature of this wretch is so heavy. Fozi is still too kind-hearted and didn't land the fatal blow." Someone else laughed. "In the end, we are still the ones who got to finish him. Sever his head and collect the reward from the Crown Prince." Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 256. Invite Dao Sword, Slay True Dragon. Qin Mu stared with wide eyes, beyond startled. He had a grotesque and variegated feeling and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just then, that sword light had avoided him and went straight for the heart of Foxian's brows, penetrating his skull. Even if he wanted to stop it, he couldn't make it in time. The aim of this sudden sword light was to slay him, the heavenly devil cult master. However, when he clashed with Foxian, he had used Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, so his Buddha rays shot to the heavens, while Foxian had used great educational heavenly devil scriptures which gave him a severe devil nature. The owner of the flying sword was over a mile away from them, so with the hazy moonlight, he had simply sent the sword flying based on the rays he saw from afar, taking Foxian's life. The retainers of the Crown Prince naturally had extremely high abilities and cultivated orthodox sword techniques. On top of that, Foxian had been already heavily injured by Qin Mu, and so he lost his life carelessly just like that. Beside the boundary stone, the dragon Qilin was staring at the Elefure. Before the two strange beasts could even start to fight, the battle had already ended. The Elefure let out a sigh of relief when he saw Qin Mu not killing Foxian. Yet to its surprise, a sword light came from nowhere. It was so sudden that the Elefure had no time to react. The figures began flying over, and Qin Mu didn't think twice before moving back onto the dragon Qilin. When the Elefure saw Foxian's death, its mind was left in a huge mess, and the creature was overwhelmed by the dragon Qilin's aura. Qin Mu jumped onto the back of his mount, and the dragon Qilin immediately fled from the scene as fire clouds grew under his feet. "That head is mine!" one of the Crown Prince's retainers shouted out. "No one shall take my credit." He came to the boundary stone and pulled out his flying sword from the heart of Foxian's brows. When he got ready to cut Foxian's head off, he was slightly stunned. How come he doesn't have hair? As the other retainers rushed after, they were bewildered when they saw Fozi riding on the dragon Qilin to escape while the Elefure that guarded Great Thunderclap Monastery stood motionless. Qin Mu turned his head back, and the heavenly devil cult master smiled towards these retainers of the Crown Prince under the moonlight, making their hearts fall into the abyss. Heavenly devil cult master. The retainers of the Crown Prince felt their whole bodies turn cold as they thought what to do next. Since the one riding the dragon Qilin was heavenly devil cult master, there was only one person that could be lying there under the boundary stone. They turned their suddenly stiff necks and saw the retainer with the sword standing helplessly. He stretched his hand out to try and block the sword hole in the heart of Foxian's brows, but there was no use. He stood up, thinking to drag the body away, but then saw the rest of his companions when he turned his head around. This retainer was out of his wits and turned around to look at the corpse of Fozi under the boundary stone before looking back at the other retainers. He then looked at the corpse again, repeating the movement of his head for the third time. What do I do? He sounded like he was sobbing. We all came here together so you guys can forget about leaving me alone. If you sabotage me, you guys won't escape death as well. Killing Fozi is a grave crime, and the Crown Prince will execute all of you as well. The other retainers also had no idea how to proceed. But then one of them said with a parched throat, "We might as well go all the way. Burn the corpse and eliminate all evidence, pushing the blame onto Heavenly Devil Cult Master. There's already more than enough shit on Heavenly Devil Cult Master, so one more thing won't make a difference." Someone in the crowd reminded, "But that Elefure saw what happened." They all turned to look at the Elefure. "Kill this deer and no one will know." They sprung into action, and countless flying swords flew out from their sheaths, coming down from the sky like sword rain which came for the Elefure. The body of the Elefure trembled as the animal revealed its true body, which was dozens of times larger. The Elefure braved the sword rain and charged at the group, ignoring the flying swords. They could prick its skin but not injure its organs. A huge bang could be heard when the huge deer horns stabbed two people and smashed them into the boundary stone. Two new bloodstains appeared on the boundary stone. The other two people immediately flew away, but this Elefure was not an unusual strange beast. It had the face of a horse, the hooves of a cow, the tail of a donkey, and the horns of a deer. Listening to the Dharma of Great Thunderclap Monastery for close to 200 years, it had cultivated remarkable abilities and was incomparably strong. The Elefure shook its head, and the deer horns flew out. One of them pierced through the chest of one man, nailing him to the ground. In the meantime, the Elefure caught up to the other person and stomped him to death. That strange beast then shook its head, and the deer horns flew back to its head. After looking back at the corpse of Fozi under the boundary stone, the Elefure turned and sprinted back to Great Thunderclap Monastery. Even though flying swords covered the creature's body, they created only external injuries. There was no decrease in the running speed. Not long later, the sky had brightened, and a few elderly monks came to the place of the boundary stone under the lead of the Elefure. Those old monks examined the situation with grim expressions. "Fozi actually died just like this." A yellow-robed old monk frowned and said, "The sword wound was indeed left behind by the retainers of the Crown Prince, not the sword skill of Heavenly Devil Cult. It also a match with the weapons of those retainers. It's just that Rulai is now discussing with Crown Prince the great plans regarding the future of the world, to change the dynasty and correct the reform of Emperor Yanfeng, returning everything to its origin. This is a plan of extreme importance. If it was spoiled by this, it's saddening to see Fozi pass away, but it's only mortal flesh that's gone. He can finally be free from the struggles in this sea of suffering." Another old monk said, "We can't let the death of Fozi spoil the plans of extreme importance. Rulai doesn't need to know about this incident. It's enough that we the Arhats of the Hall of Arhats knows about this. However, Fozi is dead, and the retainers of the Crown Prince are also dead. We can't hide this from them. We will tell Rulai and the Crown Prince that it was Heavenly Devil Cult Master who did this." Out of goodwill, Fozi sent Heavenly Devil Cult Master out of the monastery, but Heavenly Devil Cult Master launched a sneak attack on him at the boundary stone, killing Fozi. The retainers of the Crown Prince had gone to stop him, but they were all ruthlessly killed by him as well. The expressions of yellow-robed old monks changed, and an Arhat shouted out, "A monk cannot lie." The old monk's long eyebrows fluttered as he said with an emotional sigh, "There's no need for you guys to say anything. I'll do it. After saying it, I'll return to a normal life and leave the monastery. In comparison to the future of Great Thunderclap Monastery, what's the harm in giving up my clean reputation?" "Excellent, excellent. Senior brother is righteous." All the monks put their palms together and paid their respects to him. When the monks from Hall of Arhats returned to Great Thunderclap Monastery, old Rulai had already finished the discussion with Eternal Peace Crown Prince. He got up to send him off and said, "Your Highness should immediately return to the capital city. If the Emperor dies and the world is without a ruler, I'm afraid the other princes will assume the throne if your Highness is not in the capital city." Eternal Peace Crown Prince said sternly, "Buddha is absolutely right. That long-eyebrowed monk came forward at that moment and said, "Revered one of the world, heavenly devil cult master has done much evil. Fozi had gone to send him out, but his life was taken. The retainers of the crown prince had gone forward to save Fozi, but their lives were also lost, so their souls went to paradise." Eternal Peace Crown Prince was furious. That devil actually dared to do something like this? I didn't find trouble with him, so he came to kill my people instead. Buddha, this devil even dares to kill Fozi. He's truly impudent. We can't just let him off like this. Old Rulai took a look at the Arhats from the Hall of Arhats. They looked down, not speaking a word. Your Highness does not need to trouble himself with this matter. Return to the capital city as soon as possible. Great Thunderclap Monastery will settle the incident regarding Heavenly Devil Cult Master. Old Rulai had a warm expression as he looked towards the long-eyebrowed monk. Chong Mei, how long have you been in the Hall of Arhats? Revered one of the world. It's already been 209 years. Old Rulai said in an amiable manner. You shall settle the incident regarding Heavenly Devil Cult Master. For that, I shall allow you to return to your normal life. Monk Chong Mei was greatly shaken. He raised his head to look at Old Rulai, but Old Rulai had already turned around to speak to Eternal Peace Crown Prince. Your Highness, return to the capital city. There must be no delay. Eternal Peace Crown Prince agreed and hurried down the mountain while thinking to himself, this Buddha sure is a profound mystery. Monk Chong Mei tidied up and also left the mountain thinking to himself, Old Rulai had that I lied, so he chased me out of Great Thunderclap Monastery without me bringing it up, as expected of the wise and awakened one. This is a realm I can never reach in my life, so I should just make use of this body to do more things for Great Thunderclap Monastery. After going down the mountain and walking a short distance, he suddenly heard a voice coming from the sky. Monk Chong Mei, why don't you come with me? Monk Chong Mei raised his head and saw a luxurious flying ship which had stopped in the sky. The crown prince stood on the bow of that ship, inviting him over. His heart moved slightly, and he immediately rose into the sky and landed on the ship with a greeting. Your Highness, I'm no longer a monk. The surname of my normal family is Su. My name is just a... He thought for a while before breaking into laughter. I haven't used my secular name for over 200 years. It's been so long that I've already forgotten it. Please excuse me, Your Highness. Even if you return to your ordinary life, you're still half a monk and half an ordinary person. I'll just call you Su Chong Mei, said Eternal Peace Crown Prince. Su Chong Mei expressed his thanks and said, I will go with this name. What did Your Highness call me for? Heavenly Devil Cult Master. Eternal Peace Crown Prince said, This devil from the devil cult has too many tricks up his sleeves, and even Sun Nantua died from his schemes without any traces to be found. When Imperial College was having holidays and he planned to return to Great Ruins alone, I ordered people to spread the news and lured experts from all over to give chase, but he was still able to escape alive. I've also received news that the strong practitioners that chased after him, Lu Wenshu from Poor Logic Sect, Wanderer Qin Yu, Arhat Pushan, Taoist Kuyi, and even Taoist Qingshan had been killed. Heavenly Devil Cult's power is no weaker than that of Great Thunderclap Monastery. I'm afraid that if you chase after him, you will only be harmed by him. Su Chongmei's heart trembled. Lu Wenshu, Wanderer Qin Yu, these people were all famous existences, especially Taoist Qingshan. He was a righteous practitioner of life and death realm. His abilities were no weaker than those of Su Chongmei himself. Even Taoist Qingshan had been killed? Eternal Peace Crown Prince then added, I was waiting for you here to remind you to take your time in making a decision. You are not out to kill just anybody. It's the cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, the #1 sacred ground of the Devil Path. Why don't you follow me back to the capital city and plan slowly? Su Chongmei nodded in agreement. Your Highness, revenge must be taken for Fozi. Eternal Peace Crown Prince smiled. I don't only want to take the head of Heavenly Devil Cult Master, but for whole Heavenly Devil Cult to be uprooted and completely eradicated. This is what your Great Thunderclap Monastery would agree with without prior consultation. I'm sure. Don't worry. Even though you're no longer an Arhat of Great Thunderclap Monastery, after I ascend to the throne, I'll allow you to found your own sect and be your own abbot, to become Buddha. In Kunlun Jade Void Mountain's Tao sect, a Tao child ran over in a hurry to Tao Master and said, "Tao Master, Rulai has come to visit." The other asked quickly, "How many people?" "One person." Old Tao Master let out a sigh of relief. "Then he has not come to fight." "Quickly, invite." "Never mind. I shall invite him personally." After a while, old Rulai and old Tao Master sat down, and he dismissed his followers. Old Rulai also didn't beat around the bush and said directly, "I have met Eternal Peace Crown Prince." Old Tao Master's heart trembled slightly, and he said, "The Crown Prince is not as good as His Majesty. He's not a wise ruler. His Majesty knows how to rule the country too well, which is why there's this natural disaster. Tao brother, look at this snow disaster that caused the people to struggle for their lives. Do you want an even greater disaster to descend? Tao sect should know about the records from Morning Emperor Emptiness era, right?" Old Tao Master mumbled and said, "Your Buddhism refers to it as Morning Emperor Emptiness era, Emptiness Calamity, whereas my Tao sect refers to it as Founding Emperor era, Founding Emperor Calamity. I've also seen the records of Founding Emperor era and the prospering divine kingdom that had been wiped out. Countless living beings had suffered from that calamity and were turned to ashes. I'm quite worried about this matter." After a moment, he continued, "A small country with a small population that discards conventional wisdom, which is held holy and sacred. This is the lesson my Tao sect learned from that Founding Emperor calamity. With a small country and few people that don't believe in any experienced and wise saints, everyone could live well and happy, without any worries. Wouldn't that be excellent? It was fine in the past, with small countries with small populations listening to the orders of their sect. We need a new emperor. A dead emperor is better than all living things being dead," said old Rulai. Tao Master gave him a glance and asked, "What benefits did the Crown Prince promise you?" Old Rulai shook his head and said, "I didn't ask for any benefits from him." Tao Master smiled. "I believe you." Since they were done, he rose and said, "That Tao sword of mine hasn't been used for a while. I wonder if it has turned blunt, if it'll be able to slay a true dragon." Old Rulai rose to express his thanks. "Much thanks to senior brother for assisting." Tales of Hurting Gods. Chapter 257. Not Your Fault. As Qin Mu traveled forward, he saw desolation caused by the disaster. There were starving people everywhere, small and large tragedies sprung up everywhere, and plague ran amok. When compared to the peaceful territory of Great Thunderclap Monastery, these places were simply hell. Luckily, there were numerous college and primary school scholars sending medical help to suppress the plague, or else the disaster would have become even more severe. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had constructed many primary schools and colleges to replace private schools, and they revealed their worth at this moment. Even though the power of each and every one of these scholars was weak, they were astonishing together. They were equivalent to numerous small sects. Qin Mu saw officers with their men wiping out demons and monsters that were taking advantage to create even more chaos. The county magistrate was even guarding the land personally and advising the immigrants to return home since the rations the emperor sent for disaster relief would be transported soon. There were even some disciples of Tao sect and Buddhism helping disaster victims, but they were more casual. Compared with the power of the empire, their reach was limited, and they would only help wherever they went. Some people took this chance to impart their teachings and give birth to numerous evil cults, but they were all half-baked. This level of natural disaster can't wipe out such an empire, Qin Mu thought to himself. The new crops were already planted, so as long as they waited until the harvest season, the people would be appeased. The timing of this disaster in Eternal Peace Empire was extremely strange, though. It happened precisely after the entire empire was thrown into chaos and most of the rations had been exhausted by the wars. With this snow disaster added into the fray, it was enough to shake the foundation of the empire. I wonder if Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has returned to the court, if the emperor is still sending disaster relief. Also, where did this natural disaster come from? This is not something that sacred grounds like Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery can create, but that requires a god's power. He raised his head to look up at the sky in suspicion. Why had this happened? Why did heaven want a disaster to descend on eternal peace? For the orthodox teachings of gods in the human world. Before eternal peace, it was a world that was ruled by sects which formed countries of all sizes. Some of these sects had ancient inheritances and legends which said that they had been created by gods. In that case, was it because the orthodox teachings of gods in the human world were being wiped out by eternal peace empire which angered the gods into sending such a natural disaster? Or was there a more profound reason behind this? Qin Mu found some disciples of Heavenly Devil Cult and made a few inquiries. Heavenly Devil Cult was currently following the authorities to send disaster relief, and most of the disciples in the cult had been mobilized, covering all of the lands. The hall masters of every hall had also donated money out of their pockets and were all beyond broke. The problem was that some merchants were still hoarding to profit and some influential families were not selling. The emperor was angered and killed a bunch of them, then found some officials that took bribes and bent the law, coveting the money for disaster relief, and so he killed another bunch of them. There were also some people that took this chance to sell official positions, and the emperor killed one more bunch. A Heavenly Devil Cult disciple who had followed the emperor to send disaster relief had seen quite a number of things. When he spoke, his face was wide with a smile full of exultation. The emperor even faces assassins, most of whom were existences of the cult master level. However, there were civil and military officials in the entourage, and the emperor personally went into battle as well. He was extremely powerful. It's a pity cult master was not there. Qin Mu asked, "Who are the strong practitioners that had tried to assassinate the emperor?" "I've heard it was Teacher Poor, True Lord Tian, and those guys. There were also some strong practitioners from beyond the Great Wall." Qin Mu's expression changed slightly. Alliance with the cult master level strong practitioners from beyond the Great Wall? Is Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor back? "I haven't seen him." Qin Mu mumbled for a moment, then asked, "Where is the emperor now?" "He's at Bazhou Prefecture, that's 5,000 miles away from here." That Heavenly Devil Cult disciple soon added. The emperor had gone to the south and cleared the influential families that had refused to sell their rations before going to the north and is now at Bazhou. That place is still considered stable. If one wants to cultivate it, are they going to exterminate an entire family? Qin Mu shook his head. This technique is actually the technique of our Heavenly Saint Cult's funeral hall, and what they cultivate are paper humans and paper horses. They help people arrange funerals, drive away ghosts, and bring good fortune to their descendants. Fozi, if you're going to look at the scriptures with prejudice, there's no need for you to browse anymore. I'm afraid your Buddha's heart will be spoiled. Fo Xian laughed. Cult Master Qin, my great Thunderclap Monastery has already shown you Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, and you don't want me to read great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures? Qin Mu smiled slightly. All right then, as you wish. The two of them continued down the mountain, and the more Fo Xian read, the more he shook his head. When they reached the bottom of the mountain, it was already the dead of the night. By this time, he had managed to read more than half of great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures. Qin Mu looked around. In front of him was Eternal Peace Empire. If he had gone down the other side of the mountain, they would have faced great ruins, but since it was shrouded by darkness at this time, it couldn't be stepped into. The New Year's was already over, and it was the second month of the year. In the sky, the stars were sparse, but the moon was shining brightly. It was a crescent that gave off a serene light that was brighter than usual. This was near Great Thunderclap Monastery, so the dark clouds above had been long removed by the eminent monks. Because of that, the sky was especially clear. There were some villages nearby that believed in Buddhism and worshipped Buddha. However, the land around here belonged to Great Thunderclap Monastery, so all the people around were farmers. They didn't have to pay rent to the imperial court, but send offerings to Great Thunderclap Monastery for using the land to produce crops. Qin Mu wanted to return to eternal peace. The first reason for that was to continue cultivating, while the second was to manage Heavenly Saint Cult. Li Tianxing had also run in the direction of Eternal Peace Empire when he had broken free from Thousand Buddha's pagoda. Fo Xian was still reading great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures when the two of them came to the mountain gate. The monk guarding the gate was sitting with a lantern while an Elefure strange beast was sleeping next to him. There were also some retainers nearby, who got up the moment they saw them. Fozi Fo Xian went up to inquire about their origin, and one of them answered, "We are the retainers of the Crown Prince. Since we're all ordinary people, we can't enter the monastery and have to stay outside to wait. I'm sending the devil cult master down the mountain, so I don't have the time to entertain everyone. I beg your pardon." Fo Xian called the Elefure over and led this strange beast over. "Cult Master Qin, I'll need another hour to finish reading. If Cult Master doesn't mind, I would like to continue to send you off. The Elefure of my great Thunderclap Monastery listens to Dharma all year round and has a profound cultivation, so it can definitely match up to your Dragon Qilin." Qin Mu revealed a smile. "It's best this way." The Elefure and the Dragon Qilin moved at the same pace, while Buddha rays appeared behind Fo Xian's head to shine onto great educational heavenly devil scriptures for him to continue studying it. "Devil Cult Master?" The eyes of the retainers of the Crown Prince lighted up, and they asked, "Which devil cult master?" The monk who was guarding the mountain gate said, "Which one could it be? That is Cult Master Qin of Heavenly Devil Cult. He came with a tumultuous momentum and bewitched many of the monks in the monastery to return to normal lives. During these couple of days, there were monks continuously leaving the mountain to return to normal lives, some of them being my senior uncles." The retainers looked at one another and smiled. "We can find our merit here. Heavenly Devil Cult killed Sun Nantua and eradicated Nantua Monastery, and we actually managed to meet him here of all places. Go! Let's go and get our merit. Good men, don't do evil and kill people, don't harm Fozi," the gate monk said in a panic. The retainers of the Crown Prince smiled. "Don't worry." Qin Mu sat on the back of the Dragon Qilin and kept looking up at the moon in the sky, bobbing up and down as the Dragon Qilin moved. Now was the 8th day of the 2nd month, and the crescent was very curved. Soon Fo Xian let out a breath of relief and returned great educational heavenly devil scriptures to Qin Mu. "Little monk has finally finished reading. Those scriptures are truly a devil classic. Why does Cult Master Qin keeps looking at the moon in the sky?" Qin Mu didn't care much about resting and immediately went up to help. Granny C was the saintess of the cult, and even if she had lived in disabled elderly village for over 40 years, she had not learned old Ma's craft at all. On the other hand, Qin Mu was an expert in crafting all kinds of furniture. Granny C couldn't help, so she went to fetch water from the riverside and came back to polish the bronze mirror. She said, "I can't go back now, what would be the point? In great ruins, there's the darkness blocking the way. If the old devil came out to create a ruckus again, how long could the old bones of village chief and the rest last? Wouldn't it be better to just stay here and wear down the old devil's temperament?" Qin Mu quickly finished making the bed and moved it into the house. He saw the mirror was all bumpy from Granny C's polishing and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He immediately took the mirror into his hand and transformed his vital chi into White Tiger Vital Chi. After some calculation, his vital chi thread polished it finely and leveled the bronze mirror. He then went to make a dressing table. Granny C saw the Dragon Qilin sprawled out on the ground in deep sleep and Qin Mu's bloodshot eyes that were filled with exhaustion. She said, "You have hurried all night? Go to sleep first. You won't leave." "I won't." Qin Mu relaxed and went to sleep on the bed. Even though there was no bedding, he was used to sleeping outdoors and fell asleep quickly. It was unknown how long had passed when Qin Mu woke up in a daze and saw Granny C spacing out in front of the bronze mirror on the dressing table. She held scissors, which were pointed at her face, in her hands. "Granny!" Qin Mu shouted out in a panic. Granny C turned around and placed the scissors down. With a smile, she said gently, "Rulai said there's only one way to destroy the heart devil, and it's to remove his infatuation with this face. Muer, I don't want to harm you anyone, especially you." Qin Mu saw her raising the scissors again, and his tears flowed out uncontrollably. "Granny, it's not your fault. I've never blamed you. I can't do it." Stunned, Granny C placed down her scissors with a smile. "Muer, help me do it." Qin Mu got up from the bed and took the scissors from her hand and placed them gently back into her little basket. It's not your fault. No one can blame you. You've already hidden for over 40 years, never using your appearance to meet anyone. He squatted down and raised his head to look at the face that was so beautiful that there could be no other like it. This was the true appearance of the closest kin that had raised him up. Qin Mu revealed a smile. If it was me, I could at most persevere for a day or two. I couldn't last 40 years. It's not your fault for growing to be like this. Which beautiful woman would be willing to cover their own face forever and use an old face to meet people? He stood up and said, Granny, I will get rid of Li Tianxing, but for now you stay here. I'll go to Baz Ho. Something might be happening there. Granny C nodded gently. Qin Mu walked out of the room, then turned back with a smile. Granny, you should eat and drink when you should. Don't torture yourself. Rascal, lecturing me again, she retorted angrily. Qin Mu laughed and kicked the dragon Qilin awake. Still sleeping? Get up and hurry on. Tip, you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 258. Emperor Tao Master, Rulai. Many people don't realize what the reform was for, why they had to reform their lives. They say, wasn't it well in the past? Everyone was living comfortably, was joyous and harmonious, while your reforms, aren't they just to satisfy your ambition of an emperor? By offending the blue bloods and the sects, aren't you doing it to expand the territory of eternal peace? All the natural calamities and man-made disasters over the years have been your fault. We've had to suffer all of them because of that reform. But this is a fallacy. In Bazhou Prefecture, Emperor Yanfeng led a group of civil and military officials through a street, while looking at workers manning the porridge stall to feed the people lining up for food. Emperor Yanfeng went over and came to the front of a porridge stall. The worker was about to kneel down when Emperor Yanfeng held him back and said, There are few rules in such cold weather and frozen land. How much is one serving? Your Majesty, an adult gets a bowl of porridge, 2 steamed buns, and a ladle of dried vegetables. Emperor Yanfeng nodded and dismissed him. He picked up the ladle and distributed food to the disaster victims, while behind him stood the civil and military officials of the imperial court. He then continued, We had all lived well in the past. We were never common people. Minister of Agriculture, tell them, before imperial preceptor's reform, how many people could be fed with 6 aries of fertile land. Minister of Agriculture immediately said, Before the reform, 6 aries of fertile land could produce 330 pounds of crops. However, at that time, all the land belonged to influential families, monasteries, and Taoist temples, so there was no land in the hands of farmers. A farmer's family had 7-8 people, and they took care of 5 hectares of land, which had grain, fruits, vegetables, and herbs. After slogging for a year and harvesting for 2 seasons, there was no surplus grain, and they could barely fill their stomachs. They could have 1 to 2 meals of meat every month and would starve if they met with natural calamities or man-made disasters. Back then, many elderly would automatically go up the mountain or jump into rivers during years of disaster so that they wouldn't be a burden to their families. Meanwhile, the influential families, monasteries, and Taoist temples were hoarding great amounts of grain and gold. Emperor Yanfeng said, 5 hectares of land to only feed a family of 7 to 8. After painstakingly planting a year's worth of grain, where did it go? Tell them, how many people can be fed by 6 aries of land after the reform? Minister of Agriculture continued, Your Majesty had order imperial preceptor to manage the reform and reclaim all the land. Influential families, monasteries, and Taoist temples can no longer manage any land. An adult male can manage 5 hectares of land, 1 hectare of which would be fertile land. In the recent years, there was a growth in population, so the rules had been changed. An adult male can now manage 2.5 hectares of land and half a hectare of fertile land. Imperial preceptor had also made martial arts practitioners and divine arts practitioners to help with agriculture. To provide a stable crop, rain was provided during drought and water drainage during floods. Thus, there was no starvation for 160 years. Nowadays, 6 aries of land can produce 820 pounds of crops. 440 pounds are used for the land tax, but farmers no longer find it too expensive to eat meat. 330 pounds, 820 pounds. Emperor Yanfeng picked 2 steamed buns and placed them in the bowl of a starving person before giving him a ladle of dried vegetables while sighing ruefully. What is Buddha? This is Buddha, a living Buddha, a breathing Buddha, the Buddha of all common people. It's not by taking on the title of Rulai or Tao Master and giving talks on chicken soup for the soul would one become Buddha or Tao Master. Minister of Agriculture, let me ask you again, since imperial preceptor's reform was good and the rations have also increased, why are there still starvation whenever a natural disaster breaks out? Minister of Agriculture had a troubled expression and hesitated. This? Say it. Yes. Other than the increase in population, there are still things like the eating of meat and wars. Feeding livestock requires grain, as well as feeding strange beasts in the army, training soldiers, fighting wars. All of it requires grain. But the most important reason is still the circulation of cultivated land. There are some pieces of land that were bought back by the influential families, sects, and temples, who then once again became landowners. Grain has once again returned into their hands. The reason why the sects were able to rebel the previous time was because they had the money and the rations, that's why they were so daring. Still, this issue of starvation shouldn't have been so severe. It was all because after fighting the war, the empire's treasury had been emptied and the influential families, sects, and temples refused to give out rations. The effect caused by the previous rebellion of the sects is huge. Emperor Yanfeng turned his head back and took a glance at the officials. Influential families, sects, monasteries, and Taoist temples were always seated high above, eating exotic delicacies daily, talking about wind, flowers, snow, and the moon, chatting about paths, skills, and divine arts, discussing immortality and longevity. There are farmers feeding them, but who of them is willing to lend a hand to those farmers? If the farmers refuse to comply, they will send disasters and calamities on them straight away. Is this snow disaster strange? No, it isn't. When sects ruled their own countries, these kind of snow disasters weren't rare, either. However, it wasn't God sending those calamities, nor was it heaven. It was the sects sending those calamities and disasters to make the common people comply and not dare to rebel. Imperial preceptor's reform made sects have to work for farmers, for merchants. This is what made them displeased, and they didn't want to do it. In the meantime, Imperial Preceptor created more reforms and founded primary schools, colleges, and Imperial College. He used them to pass down the abilities of sects to the people of the world, to let them be able to protect themselves, and the sects were even more displeased. They wanted to rebel, to kill people. Little did they think that their ancestors from 8 generations back were all farmers, none of them an exception. Look and listen clearly. I have executed them this time, and if you guys act like them the next time, I will execute you guys as well. The officials I want aren't from those sects that are high above or any experts or Buddhas. The officials I want are those that are able to handle matters in a down-to-earth manner. Scholars must be able to work for farmers, artisans, and merchants. There are actually some scholarly officials who think they are a level higher than others. Damn it, scribe, allow me to say a profanity. Damn it, they only know how to grumble and view themselves highly. I wish for more than anything to execute them. The civil and military officials lowered their heads and didn't dare to say a word. 2 scribes looked at each other, both of their expressions troubled. The older scribe then said softly, "Your Majesty, Son of Heaven needs to watch his language. I don't say profanities frequently. Wasn't I really angered, which was why I had scolded people? Pardon me, scribe." While he had been speaking, the person in queue for food was a high monk who was holding onto a golden alms bowl with a smile. "That was a very good speech, Your Majesty. However, now that the natural disaster has come, the righteous path is to stop the disaster and save the common people from suffering." Emperor Yanfeng took a look at this high monk and gave him a bowl of porridge, 2 steamed buns, and a ladle of dried vegetables before saying, "Not only was my speech good, what I do is even better. High monk, eat slowly. Don't bother the people of the secular world." That high monk agreed and carried his golden alms bowl away. Rulai! The people behind Emperor Yanfeng were stunned when they saw that high monk. After he left, An old Taoist came from the back. His clothes were disheveled, and his hair was slightly messy. While carrying a bowl, he smiled. "Has your Majesty eaten?" Emperor Yanfeng had a grim expression as he scooped porridge for him and shook his head. "Not yet. Your Majesty should eat more. It's easier to be moved if you're full." Emperor Yanfeng nodded and grabbed 2 steamed buns and a bowl of porridge. He said to the civil and military officials, "Come and eat some too, we have trouble." The civil and military officials looked at the monk and Taoist like they had met formidable foes, but the 2 people only squatted down at the corner of a wall. They drank the porridge and ate the buns and dried vegetables, enduring hardship gladly. The officials went forward and took a serving each before squatting down beside another wall. Emperor Yanfeng soon did the same and ate silently. After eating, he came to the front of pressure well to wash his bowls, and the officials all lined up behind him. Rulai and Tao Master also came forward to wash their bowls while saying, "It's been a while since we ate meals of the human world. They have a different kind of flavor to them now. I and these ministers have been eating them for months." Emperor Yanfeng said seriously, "Tao brothers should eat them more and not let yourselves stay too high above. Staying high above is to keep ourselves from the secular world." Old Tao Master smiled. "You are the emperor of the human world, so you naturally rule over the secular people. Whereas we who cultivate Tao and Buddhism have to be far away from the secular world. If we got tainted, it would be hard to break free." Emperor Yanfeng smiled and asked, "Tao Master, can you become a real god?" Tao Master shook his head. Emperor Yanfeng asked Rulai, "Rulai, can you become a true Buddha?" Rulai shook his head. "The divine bridge is broken. Who can become a true god or Buddha? Then what bullshit are you spouting? Staying far from the secular world and saying you are very powerful is... Scribes, I have spouted profanities again, don't record them. I know. You guys can fall back. You're not needed here," Emperor Yanfeng said as he walked out of the city accompanied by the civil and military officials. He stopped then and turned back with a smile. "Even though it's according to the rules of the imperial court and not the rules of the martial world, there's no need for so many people. Those of divine bridge realm stay, others may fall back." Most of the civil and military officials stopped in their tracks. Only 7 people followed Emperor Yanfeng. They were Grand Marshal Monk Yuan Kong, Situ Xiuliqing, Sikong Wei Pingbo, General of Heavenly Strategies Qin Baoyue, King of Mount Tailing Xuhua, Grand General of White Horse Quan Dinggu, and High Official Su Yunji. Including the Emperor, there were 8 people. Rulai and Tao Master paid no attention and continued to walk forward. Emperor Yanfeng led everyone forward, walking past the outskirts of the city. When they came to the fields outside the city, he stopped to look at the crops and asked an old farmer, "Will there be harvest?" "Will," that old farmer said in a loud voice. Emperor Yanfeng smiled and turned back to look at the ministers behind him. "There's going to be harvest," Tao Master said. "Your Majesty, there might be harvest this year, but there might not be the next year. Old Tao has brought a scroll which records the story of great ruins. It's called the Founding Emperor Calamity Classics. Your Majesty can slowly take a look while we walk. If your Majesty still insists on the reform after finishing the scroll, this world is going to change." Rulai sighed. "Tao Master is merciful." Tao Master shook his head. "He doesn't know the danger of this. If he knew, he would be like us." When he was done, he passed the Founding Emperor Calamity Classics into the hands of Emperor Yanfeng. "Your Majesty, be careful of tricks," High Official Su Yunji warned. Emperor Yanfeng smiled. "No harm." He took the Founding Emperor Calamity Classics from Tao Master's hands and read them in detail. They continued to head forward at a leisurely pace. Emperor Yanfeng flipped page after page and read through the Founding Emperor Calamity Classics. Tao Master and Rulai never hurried him, quietly walking nearby. After covering over 100 miles, Emperor Yanfeng had finished reading the Founding Emperor Calamity Classics and composed himself. He raised his head to look at the sky but did not say anything. Old Tao Master asked, "Your Majesty has the well-being of all living things in mind, so you should know what to do, right?" Emperor Yanfeng was in a daze for a time. Then he suddenly said, When I was young, Eternal Peace Empire didn't have such a large territory and the emperor wasn't so respected. At that time, all the sects and influential families were still riding roughshod over people. I had once followed an envoy out of the country to visit a place called Yuanqi Country, which is now Yuan Prefecture. There was a lightning disaster there, and the sky was covered in dark clouds which shrouded Yuanqi Country. The lightning crackled and struck non-stop, killing livestock and common people alike. The emperor of Yuanqi Country brought his civil and military officials to kneel and beg for forgiveness from the lightning disaster. The common people of that country were also kneeling on the ground, begging heaven to grant them a pardon. In that lightning disaster, the emperor was electrocuted to death. Only after the event did I learn the heaven in their words wasn't the heavenly gods but hidden lightning sect. That year, the harvest hadn't been good, so the goods offered to hidden lightning sect were lacking, and hidden thunder sect sent a calamity on them. What had caused the disaster was the cult's legacy spirit treasure, 9 heavens lightning luring cover. The emperor had put all the blame on himself, which was why hidden lightning sect had electrocuted him and changed the emperor. At that time, I was already thinking. He looked at Tao Master and Rulai and said slowly, enunciating every word, "I had to overthrow you guys. Now, I have done it, but what Imperial Preceptor and I have done is still not enough, so there is this snow disaster. It was sent by a god? Then I shall overthrow that god." Tao Master couldn't resist asking, "Your Majesty isn't going to put the well-being of all living things in mind? Do you want to turn eternal peace into the likes of great ruins? When you and Imperial Preceptor carried out your reform and took down the many sects to conquer such a huge territory, this old Tao didn't stop you, did I? However, if you continue with your reform, heaven will be angered and all living things will be in danger." Old Rulai said, "Think thrice, Your Majesty. You have your own beliefs, and I have mine." Old Rulai sighed and said to Tao Master, "Old Tao friend, let's just change the emperor." Tao Master fetched his Tao sword and nodded. "Oh well, I said what I could. What can I do if Your Majesty remains stubborn? We'll just have to change the emperor." Emperor Yanfeng looked around and saw old Taoists, old monks, teacher poor, and the rest walking in from all directions, surrounding them in the middle. Their numbers were much greater than his own. The expression of General of Heavenly Strategies and the rest changed drastically. Emperor Yanfeng was stunned, then broke into laughter. "Rulai, Tao Master, I thought you would go by the rules of the martial world. Never would I have thought you guys would go by the rules of the imperial court." Rulai shook his head. "We have no choice, so we seek forgiveness from Your Majesty. Tao Master, Tao friends, let us send His Majesty on his way." Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 259, Cow Cart. The land 100 miles west of Bazhou City was filled with murderous intent, and even the air there seemed to have solidified. The vital qi around the old Taoists and old monks raged and formed into gods whose aura could swallow mountains and rivers. Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery had long legacies which were even greater than that of Heavenly Devil Cult. To these two sacred grounds, Heavenly Devil Cult was still considered a young cult. From the gods that were formed by the vital of old Taoists and old monks there, they could see the gods that had appeared in the course of history. There was one with 3 heads and 4 arms, another with a tortoise's shell and a horsetail whisk, another was a hoopoe with a leopard's tail, one was a Vajrayaksa and many others. As for Teacher Poor, True Lord Tian, and the rest, they were a different sight. Even though their legacies weren't as ancient as those of Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery, they were still incomparably powerful. Some of the gods that appeared behind them were wise saints, some were women holding on to golden insects, and some were poor gods that wore clothes filled with holes. The qi appearance of the first-ranking high officials of the imperial court was different from them, however. Behind General of Heavenly Strategies Qin Baoyue wasn't a god, but a pair of golden truncheons. They shone with a brilliant light, and on their bodies were 8 blades that spun continuously. This man had frequently participated in wars and didn't cultivate to become a god or Buddha, so he treated his weapons as a god who took charge in battle. The god behind Grand Martial Monk Yuan Kong wasn't a Buddha either, but an ascetic monk who was wrapped in chains and holding a Buddhist's monk knife. He had a battle posture and looked very much like the man himself. Behind King of Mount Tai Ling Shuhua were 9 dragons coiling around Mount Tai with Mount Tai as the altar to worship them. He was in charge of the offering of sacrifices to the ancestors. Sikong Wei Pingbo was in charge of the water conservancy in Eternal Peace Empire. So his vital qi didn't form a god behind him, but a long river dam that was constructed from earth, wood, and water. His god was water conservancy. Situ Xiuliqing was a female official who was in charge of the empire's treasury. She was responsible for all the finances in the world. The god that her vital qi formed was no god, either, but a string of great abundance coins that slithered around like a huge python. Her god was money. High official Su Yunji was also a female official. She could open her own bureau, so her rank was on par with the 3 counselors. She was a free civil official, but she had reached the highest official position. She was in charge of all primary schools and colleges, so what had transformed from her vital qi also wasn't a god, but a book and a ruler. Behind Grand General of White Horse Quan Dinggu was a steed that was blazing with flames, and on that horse was a god bathed in the flames of war. He had 8 arms which held a knife, shield, spear, pike, sword, and halberd. He had 4 faces which looked in 4 sides and 8 directions, while flames spewed out his eyes like beams. All the 4 faces were the general's own face. From this, one could see that cult master level strong practitioners of the imperial court were different from those of the sections. Tao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery worshipped gods and Buddha, so the gods behind them were all gods and Buddhas. On the other hand, the strong practitioners of the imperial court treated whatever they managed. Each of them had different duties and each had their own specialty. Even monk Yuan Kong, who was from Buddhism, treated himself as an ascetic monk that was cultivating in battle and didn't show the bearing of a great Buddha. A long-eared monk's expression changed slightly, and he said in a low voice, "Imperial Preceptor's reform has caused all these evil and unorthodox paths that don't worship the gods. They would rather worship all this rubbish than gods and Buddhas." Grand General of White Horse pointed at this long-eared monk and sneered, "Use what you learn, act with your knowledge. Long-eared monk, your skills acquired through religious practices are shallow. It'll be hard for you to escape death. How can cultivating your entire life be any worse than achieving enlightenment to become a god or Buddha?" Emperor Yanfeng said leisurely, "These are all people's own abilities, so relying on gods and Buddhas is the unorthodox path. By doing their jobs properly and cultivating them into the realm of gods and Buddha will they become gods and Buddhas." The old Taoists of Tao sect frowned, and old Tao master shook his head. Cultivating their jobs to the realm of God? In that case, won't they still have to work for mortals even after becoming gods? This is once again the teachings of Heavenly Devil cult. None other than the everyday use of common people. Emperor, you've been influenced by Imperial Preceptor and Heavenly Devil cult. Emperor Yanfeng smiled. If I went to Heavenly Devil cult, I just might be able to become the cult master. Since it's the devil path, there's no need for further words. The old Taoists adjusted the treasure swords on their backs, and it was hard to say who had shouted out the first, "Die!" Once this word was out, murderous air overflowed into the heavens, and the trembling cold wind became incomparably bone-piercing. Yet at that moment, an old man walked over while pulling onto a cow cart that went gulu-gulu. Everyone pulled their murderous air back and stood quietly, looking down without saying a word. The old man was astonished when he saw the entire sky filled with gods and Buddhas. The cow shivered in fear, unable to even pull the cart anymore on its shaky legs. The old man was so angry that he whipped that cow a few times until it exerted its force to slowly pull the cart out of this place where they shouldn't be. When the old man and the cow cart disappeared into the distance, the battle was about to erupt. Yet when the strong practitioners of the Divine Bridge realm were about to make a move, they suddenly heard another gulu-gulu sound of the turning wheel. Another cow cart came driving over, and everyone saw another old man walking over while pulling onto that cow cart. When he saw everyone, he trembled in fear and used a lot of effort to move the cow cart away. Everyone let out a sigh of relief and was about to make a move when the gulu-gulu of the wheel turning was heard again. An old Taoist said angrily, "In such cold weather and frozen land after a natural disaster, Where did so many cow carts come from? Everyone was astonished. That was indeed the case. Now that there were calamities everywhere, all the livestock had been eaten, so how did 3 cow carts just pass by them one after another? Furthermore, why here of all places? An elderly couple sat on the next cow cart. One of them was a white-haired old woman, while the other was an old yet not that old man. Everyone waited quietly for the cow cart to pass. However, that cow cart stopped nearby. That cow seemed to be fearless, and the old man and old woman jumped down without much care. As if they were about to perform a conjuring trick, they opened up the cloth on the cart and gave a gentle shake before pulling it off. Instantly, dozens of weirdly shaped people appeared on the cow cart, filling it up until they were almost spilling out. Heavenly devil cult's left and right guardians, 12 cult protector elders, and also 2 heavenly kings. Dao Master looked down with a helpless expression. We only saw 2 people and a cow coming on a cow cart, so I never expected to see 16 people springing out. What a great trick, Heavenly Devil Cult. Left Guardian Kong Lingxian raised his head and chuckled. We like to perform conjuring tricks as we traveled through the martial world to make a living by getting tips from officials. We're sorry to have embarrassed ourselves in front of the lords. Right Guardian Shui Bai beamed at everyone. Old Bald Donkey, Old Taoist, the cult master ordered us to follow the emperor when he went home for New Year. So now that the emperor is in trouble, the old brothers and I can't ignore it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to take the punishment once cult master comes back. The 12 cult protector elders and 2 heavenly kings of Heavenly Devil Cult jumped down from the cow cart. Heavenly King Shur and Heavenly King Yu stretched their bodies and paid their respects to everyone with a smile. Everyone here are all high figures, so we, the little old men, pay our respect. Cult Master handed us a living and breathing emperor, so if you guys killed him and we had to return a dead emperor to him, we could only use our lives to appease his anger. Beggar Sect Master Chi Dio shouted out loudly, "Evil and unorthodox path. The Imperial Court associates with the filthy Heavenly Devil Cult. So fellow friends of Great Thunderclap Monastery, feel free to subdue the devils. Die!" A shout burst forth, and thunder rumbled in the sky once the battle erupted. In an instant, violent gusts of air surged forth in all directions, flattening portions of a forest nearby. This battle far surpassed the one to pacify the rebellion by Imperial Preceptor. Even though there were many cult master level existents in that battle, they were all a level inferior when compared to the cult master level strong practitioners of the 3 big sacred grounds. With the Imperial Court being equivalent to 1 big sacred ground as well, one could well imagine the power of the strongest practitioners from the 4 big sacred grounds clashing at the same time. However, the whole nest of Great Thunderclap Monastery and Dao Sect had come out to fight this time, whereas there were only half of the strong practitioners from the Imperial Court and Heavenly Devil Cult. Since Dao Master and Rulai were present as well, the situation of the opposing side wasn't optimistic. Once a battle starts, people will fall. The long-eared monk found Quan Dingu straight away, and the 2 strong practitioners of Divine Bridge Realm opened up all of their divine treasures, cracking the heaven and rending fissures in the earth. The long-eared monk was the head of Great Thunderclap Monastery's Hall of Arhats, and was proficient in Buddhism and victorious fighting skill. Meanwhile, Quan Dingu was the Grand General of White Horse, riding horses and killing people all his life, eradicating countries and sects as he went through fire and water. When Imperial College was just founded, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had gathered all the experts in the world to study the path, skills, and divine arts. One of them was Quan Dingu, and he could be said to be one of the top strong practitioners of Eternal Peace Empire. When the victorious fighting skill met with the skill of slaughter, a sea of blood overflowed into the sky, and flames of war blazed furiously atop it. This vision seemed like a real existence, and it had been formed by the murderous heir of Quan Dingu. A huge Buddha stood over the sea of blood, and in front of it was the long-eared monk. Compared to the huge Buddha, he seemed to be much smaller. Through the sea of blood and flames, a person rushed towards him, and it was Quan Dingu. The horse behind him stepped on the flames of battle, and the person behind the horse was like a monstrous god of slaughter, looking terrifying and incomparably fierce. Evil and orthodox path. Death cannot wipe out the crimes of those who don't cultivate true Buddhism. Golden color appeared around the body of the long-eared monk as he interlocked his arms. Chanting the incantations of Buddhism, he executed 2 kinds of mudra at the same time. They were incomparably intricate and struck towards the lethal points on Quan Dinggu. To the monk's surprise, Quan Dinggu did not dodge but allow the skills to hit him. The arms formed by vital qi, which were under Quan Dingwu's armpits, flailed as he wielded the knife, shield, spear, pike, sword, and halberd to strike. The knife severed the arms of the long-eared monk. The shield bashed open his skull. The spear pierced through his chest and lifted him up. The pike penetrated his heart. The sword light sliced his throat, and the halberd hung his body high up. Behind them, the god of slaughter clashed against the huge Buddha, while the sea of blood and flames swirled around them like a whirlpool. "You didn't dodge," the long-eared monk said astringently as he hung on the long halberd. A huge shield smashed down and shattered him into pieces. Killing people on the battlefield only requires 1 or 2 moves, so what's the point of dodging? The battlefield requires a skill for slaughter. If I matched your fighting style, wouldn't I be taking my weak side to match your expert one? Quan Dinggu spat out a huge mouthful of blood. The 2 mudras from the long-eared monk had almost shattered his 5 viscera and 6 bowels. His ribs and shoulder blades were crushed, causing him to suck in cold air from the pain. Suddenly, a golden bright palm came smashing down, and a loud boom rang out. Another monk had come rushing over, his hands carrying emptiness as he squashed him with an 18 heavens pagoda. This building was filled with gods and Buddhas that crushed all of Quan Dingwu's bones. "Monk Yuan Kong, you are also a Buddhist. Why did you have to take the devil path and become part of the hawks and hounds of the imperial court?" Nun Hong Yin from Great Thunderclap Monastery's Hall of Great Teachings blocked Grand Marshal Monk Yuan Kong and tried to persuade him. "It's time for you to come to your senses and stop making mistakes. If you continue to make them, you will forever be unable to achieve the spiritual state." Monk Yuan Kong's eyes burst open, and he shouted out, "What's the spiritual state? With a Buddha in heart, one will never achieve the spiritual state. His Majesty has ordered me to manage the laws of the army, so I chained myself down with iron laws. When I break these chains, I'll be able to achieve the spiritual state." Nun Hong Yin was furious and swung her horsetail whisk over. "You've been tainted by the devil. Let me get rid of it for you." The huge battle erupted, and the old Taoists of Tao sect sent out their swords. In an instant, the sky was full of sword lights. They came from the sword skills of 14 writings of Tao sword and were incomparably powerful as well as extraordinary sharp. There was no question that it was the number 1 sword technique in Tao sect. "Get into the formation. Get rid of the devil," an old Taoist shouted out. "Lay a formation and refine the Taoists to death," Shui Bai shouted out sternly, and the 2 heavenly kings, as well as the 12 cult protector elders, formed a huge formation to welcome the old Taoists. All the people here were all old acquaintances and had fought each other countless times before, so they knew each other's methods well. On the other side, General of Heavenly Strategies, High Official Sikong Situ, King of Mount Tai were all blocked by the strong practitioners of Great Thunderclap Monastery. The monks relied on having more people to encircle and annihilate them, avoiding only Emperor Yanfeng. Emperor Yanfeng looked over and saw Teacher Por, Chi Daio, and True Lord Tian walking over. Meanwhile, Rulai and Tao Master were carrying over an alms bowl and a sword. Rulai said with a warm expression, "Teacher, fellow Tao friends, go and assist the others. Leave this to this old monk and the old Taoist." Teacher Por and the rest acknowledged it and immediately joined the battle nearby. Rulai looked at Emperor Yanfeng and said, "Your Majesty, excuse me." Emperor Yanfeng's body trembled, and his dragon chi cut across the vast sky with a grandeur. Roars of the dragon came from the sky, and a real dragon could be faintly seen in the clouds. It stretched out its head and claws. Then the huge dragon's head lowered to look at Rulai. Tao Master walked over and swung his Tao sword. Sword light covered the sky and forced the dragon back. The old man then praised, "Your Majesty is about to turn the fake into real, becoming a true god." What a pity the divine bridge is broken and there's no hope. This old Tao is useless and could only cultivate half of the 14th move in the 14 writings of Tao Sword. Today, I shall use this incomplete writing to experience the powerful and benevolent rule of your majesty. Rulai's golden alms bowl flew up and covered the sky. A piece of golden light spewed out, and in it were both gods and Buddhas of the 20 heavens. The topmost level was Brahma, and it had a majestic atmosphere. Rulai smiled. I shall use the highest realm of Rulai's Mahayana Sutra to experience the 9 dragons monarch technique of your majesty. Tales of Herding Gods. Chapter 260, Slaughter. Rulai and Tao Master were outstanding talents of the previous generation and could have cultivated to the level of God and Buddha. If the divine bridge wasn't broken, both of them would have already risen heavenwards and left this world. Emperor Yanfen might be the least experienced one among them, but he occupied the 9 dragon veins and cultivated in the imperial city, which allowed him to enjoy an exceptional advantage. He could cultivate twice as fast, and he was exceptionally talented in cultivation, which made him one of the top strong practitioners in this world. Eternal Peace Empire was acclaimed to be the biggest sacred ground in this world, and he and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor were the sect and cult masters of this biggest sacred ground. Even so, he was still slightly inferior to Rulai and Tao Master. Those two had joined hands to deal with him not because they felt that their abilities were inferior to him, but that they would find it difficult to keep him from escaping if they fought him one-on-one. However, if they made an alliance, Emperor Yanfeng's escape was an impossibility. Crackle, crackle. Bolts of lightning came striking down from the clear sky, surrounding Emperor Yanfeng's body with sparks. Incomparably bright and clear lights surrounded the real dragons dancing in the sky, and the 9 dragons roared in unison and clawed towards Tao Master and Rulai. Rulai chuckled, and the golden alms bowl flipped upwards as it shone with a brilliant golden color. The heavens were sent out, which made the gods and Buddhas clash with the dragons. Old Tao friend, I'll hand the job of killing the emperor to you, Rulai said with a smile. Old Tao Master controlled his sword, and the sword light moved at a wonderful rhythm, taking control of all the operations of the human world. He chanted softly, Tao nourishes the earth of all heavens, giving birth to all laws, and the whole world will return to one. Your Majesty, this incomplete move. Before he could finish saying that, 2 trails of light flashed by and suddenly stopped. Old Tao Master hurriedly controlled the sword to stop the attack and concentrated on what was happening. At that moment, he saw an elder in a green Buddhist robe and a blind man with a bamboo cane standing in midair. Rulai, fighting eh? Blind asked with a beaming smile. Rulai also retrieved the golden light that was being spewed out by the golden alms bowls and smiled. Ma Wangshan, Tao friend Blind, why are you two here? Old Ma said coldly, searching. Blind knocked his bamboo cane down, and the sky trembled. The strong practitioners that were engaged in a vicious battle were all astonished and hurriedly stopped. Blind beamed at them and asked, the gales rise and the cloud rise with them, and everyone seems to be busy fighting. Everyone, now that I've greeted you, I'm sorry to disturb, but may I ask if you saw a woman? Quan Dinggu, who was in the state of being bashed to death, finally had a chance to breathe. Blind man, who are you looking for? A woman, especially beautiful. One look at her and you won't forget her. The kind that will eat away your heart. Blind sighed. This woman is very powerful and an old devil lives inside her heart wishing to commit evil. He fell in love with her appearance and plans to take her body to become a woman. This is what is called with a beauty like jade, a golden house is made. We originally went to Great Thunderclap Monastery to let old Rulai subdue this old devil. He babbled for quite some time, yet no one was able to tell what he was trying to say. Old Ma then said, Blind, the important point. Blind scratched his head and said, this woman is the previous cult mistress of Heavenly Devil Cult, the previous saintess. Rulai wanted to kill the emperor, so he let her escape. Rulai chuckled. This old monk was unable to attend to 2 things at the same time, so I was unable to help her, no matter how much I would have liked to. Blind scolded him angrily. Say earlier if you can't do it. Isn't it great? Now we can't find her at all. Did any of you Tao friends see the previous cult mistress of Heavenly Devil Cult? She's especially beautiful and can charm you to your bones with just a word. Did anyone see her? Everyone shook their heads. A hope lit up in Shui Baiye's heart, and she said loudly, "We are from Heavenly Saint Cult. I hope you too can assist us." Rulai was astonished, and old Tao Master asked, "What's their background?" "My main disciple and spear god," Rulai said. Old Tao Master said in astonishment, "So it's the three-eyed divine Constable Ma and the God's eyes from back then. You've already become this old." Old Ma shook his head and said, "Your matter isn't as important as us finding our person. We won't bother. You guys killing the Emperor and protecting the Emperor is really not as urgent as us finding our person." Blind sighed ruefully. "If the Emperor is dead, you'll just need to change to a new one. However, if that demoness runs out, the whole world will be doomed." "Emperor, have you seen this cult mistress before?" Emperor Yanfeng had a grim expression, and he slowly shook his head. "I've never seen her before. May I ask the two seniors to assist?" Blind was slightly disappointed. "No interest. It's good that you haven't seen her. If you had seen her, you could only jolly wait for your empire to be destroyed." "Old Ma, let's go. She couldn't have gotten far." Old Ma nodded, and the two of them whooshed away, vanishing without a trace. Everyone was startled. They are really weird senior experts. The sounds of slaughter rang out in the air again. Rulai released the light from the golden alms bowl, and the 20 heavens soared into the sky. Tao Master released his sword light, and the power of the 14th writing burst forth. The sword light expounded the relations between the earth and the heaven. It was like heaven and like earth, transforming into all laws, into the alignment of stars. This sword had the aspect of all the relations between the earth and the heaven as one. Emperor Yanfeng executed 9 dragons monarch technique, and the propitious vapors of the 9 dragons surrounded his body as he stepped onto multicolored sunlight. Each of his blows contained power beyond imagination which could rend mountains and split seas, reversing heaven and earth. He was proficient in a great number of divine arts and could even execute Tao Sword of Tao Sect and victorious fighting skill of Great Thunderclap Monastery. Any divine art could somehow become miraculous in his hands and achieve unimaginable power. Even the secrets of hatred parting heavenly sword, a sword skill which only women could cultivate, was able to be executed by him at an even greater power. When touched by him, even the most ordinary moves would gain immense power. Spells, sword skills, and even divine arts of the corporeal body could all be executed by him, and the power of every strike would be like moving the mountains and draining the seas. 9 dragons monarch technique had already been cultivated to the level of God by him. Tao Master's eyes lighted up, and his sword skill moved and attacked Emperor Yanfeng like a storm. He praised. Everyone said Imperial Preceptor was a genius in path and skills, but the world has failed to notice Emperor Yanfeng. "Your Majesty, you're already a Grandmaster and you could establish your own sect and create your own sacred ground. What a pity!" Chi, chi, chi. Tao Sword had the rhythm of heaven and earth which broke through Emperor Yanfeng's layers of defense and injured him again and again. Rulai saw an opening, and his golden alms bowl flipped to make the 20 heavens pressure him. The 20 small worlds in the alms bowls pressed down onto Emperor Yanfeng's body one after another. Emperor Yanfeng grunted as he held out against the immense pressure of the 20 heavens. His movements became very slow. However, the power of his path, skills, and divine arts had instead become more and more powerful as he contended against Tao Sword. The incomplete sword skill from Tao Master had a myriad of transformations, and it had no traces as he derived the limits of algebra operations. He thoroughly performed the path of producing 1, 1 producing 2, 2 producing 3, and 3 producing all things, and achieving the essence of the 3 that produced all things. However, Tao Master's wisdom was cut short here, so he hadn't completely succeeded in cultivating the final move, which was why his skill was incomplete. Yet, even though it was an incomplete sword skill, it could destroy all paths, skills, and divine arts. Rulai suspended the golden alms bowl in the air and chanted in his Buddha voice. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has yet to appear, but changes are inevitable. Let's finish this as fast as possible. When he finished saying this, his body trembled and transformed into a tall Buddhist idol. His palm smacked forward lightly, and his 5 fingers shook, which resulted in 5 mountains pressing down. At this moment, Qin Mu was sitting on the back of the dragon Qilin 300 miles away. The dragon Qilin was still sprinting through the air while stepping on his fire clouds. Faster, try to go faster. Qin Mu felt terrifying pulses from ahead and hurried his mount. If you can run faster, I'll give you 3 buckets of scarlet fire spirit pills. The dragon Qilin panted heavily as he said, Cult Master, I'm already trying my best. Qin Mu gritted his teeth and said, Your speed is a whole chunk slower than that of the green bull. He could easily run twice as fast as you and travel 10,000 miles in a sprint. Fatty dragon, if you exert more strength, I'll bring you to beat up the green bull. While if you remain this slow, I'll bring the green bull to beat you. The dragon Qilin gritted his teeth and suddenly exerted all his strength to sprint forward. The fire clouds under his fire exploded, and his speed was raised tremendously, almost throwing Qin Mu off. After running 30 to 50 miles like this, the dragon Qilin's speed slowed down again, and he started foaming at his mouth. Cult Master, I can't take it anymore. Qin Mu was helpless and said fiercely, Still dare to be a glutton? I'll put you on the dinner table on next New Year. Just as he was saying that, trails of green and gray light whooshed past, leaving him stunned. That 2 lights then turned back. Mu'er, why are you here? The 2 lights stopped, revealing themselves as Old Ma and Blind. Blind said, If my eyesight wasn't good, I just might have passed by you. When did you leave Great Thunderclap Monastery? Did the monks give you any trouble? Qin Mu immediately said, I left right after you guys. Grandpa Blind, Grandpa Ma, things are bad. Rulai and the rest are killing the emperor. Old Ma said, We have seen it. Small matter. The emperors have always kept changing. Blind grumbled, Mu'er, you can't ignore the more important matter. Li Tianxing is the biggest trouble. If this wretch takes over Granny's body, that would be a real problem. Who's going to be able to stop her? I found Granny, so there's no need for grandpas to worry. Granny just doesn't want to return to Great Ruins as she's afraid of implicating you guys. Qin Mu blinked then and asked, Can grandpas save the emperor? Old Ma looked at Blind, and Blind shook his head. Hard. The emperor might already be dead. Once Rulai and Dao Master ally themselves together, even Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would probably be helpless. That's right, your heavenly devil cult is also there, and I reckon they will die miserably. Qin Mu gritted his teeth. The emperor can't die yet. There's no need to bother about the experts of my cult though. They can teleport away anytime. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor is not there. Never saw him. Old Ma said, Rulai is old, Dao Master is also old, and they both can't fight for a long period of time. Otherwise, much of their lives would be exhausted. Blind beamed. We are younger than them. Old Ma nodded and Blind smiled. In that case, let us snatch the emperor back. Mu'er, wait here. We will go snatch the emperor's corpse back for you. Qin Mu was stunned. Corpse? Old Ma left into the distance, so his voice came from far away. Since Dao Master had made a move with Rulai, he's definitely dead. In the battlefield, Rulai and Dao Master attacked together as they tried to end this battle as fast as possible. Emperor Yanfeng suffered heavy blows repeatedly while withstanding the attacks of the 2 godlike existences. His qi and blood were still extremely vigorous, whereas the qi and blood of Rulai and Dao Master were fluctuating up and down. However, the cultivations of these 2 people were simply too strong. In terms of cultivation, both of them far surpassed him, and in terms of battle power, both of them were also a level higher than him. What's more, these 2 godlike existences had joined hands to attack him. Even though his qi and blood were vigorous, he was getting burned out and was merely a dying ember. Dao Master and Rulai were well aware that the next move could end his life when a bamboo cane came striking over. Old Dao Master hurriedly swung his sword to defend, and Rulai felt a murderous intent coming from his back. The golden alms bowl immediately shone backward, and a ding and dong could be heard as the bamboo cane struck the sword and the sword stabbed into the golden alms bowl. Blind stumbled backward and praised, "Superb abilities, and your cultivations are higher than mine. Just a little weaker than that of village chief, that old fellow." Once he had finished saying this, he turned and left. Rulai and Dao Master hurriedly turned back and saw that Emperor Yanfeng had vanished without a trace. No need to chase. Emperor Yanfeng's qi and blood have withered, and all his divine treasures are shattered. Rulai sighed. Good. Even if he's saved, he will be a useless person. A body was suddenly thrown towards Qin Mu and crashed onto the dragon Qilin's back. Muer, the corpse you wanted is here,